Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of Draft on Tap here on the Barroom Network. My name is Aldo Gandia. Danny Shimon will join us momentarily, and Neil Stopchinski, who is going to be reporting from his rooftop in the north side of Chicago, the near northwest side of Chicago, will be with us a little later. What a wild first round. I hope everybody's been taking notes because I loaded in, if you can see the crawl at the bottom of the screen, I loaded in the draft order. And when I went to plug in the names, there were so many teams that were wrong. So if there's any mistakes in the crawl, it's because I screwed up here at the last minute. As I was adding the names. So it was a wild first round. And Danny is with us now to help make some sense out of it. Danny, how are you, brother?
Man, talk about you're not joking. Talk about wild. I mean, and things kind of went, progressed somewhat normally within the first 10 picks, right? There are a couple of surprises there, and then all of a sudden the trade up from the Saints to come up and get Chris Olave, and then bam, 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 and then of course a blockbuster, another blockbuster this offseason. AJ Brown goes from the Titans over to Philadelphia, who gives him $100 million contract, and then the Titans draft the guy I comped them to when we were doing our scouting reports. AJ Brown is the guy I comped Treylon Burks to, and that's exactly what the Titans thought, because they ended up going up and getting him, and now he's going to be the replacement for AJ Brown. Now, we'll see how that all works out, but man, it's a wild night. I haven't gone through the entire list, just kind of rehash in terms of who went where, but just off the top of my head, the two New York teams knocked out of the park. I think the Giants and the Jets both did tremendous jobs. Obviously, Joe Douglas coming back into the end of that first round to get Jermaine Johnson for some reason, who dropped down. I'm not sure what was going on there. I don't know if there was any medical issues or anything like that with him, and I think the Giants knocked it out of the park with Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeaux. I think those are going to be two future Pro Bowl players for the Giants. And guys, I don't know if we're going to touch this later on or what, but the NFC North got better tonight.
As expected. I mean, they had picks.
And everyone's going to be knocking the Packers for not taking a receiver. But you know what? They stuck to their board. Right. They didn't reach. They didn't freak out. They didn't listen to all their fan base, chatting here, get a receiver. They say, you know what? We've done this in the past, guys. We've gotten players in the first round that have been all pros. We've gotten receivers in the second round that have been all pros. So look for them to hit the receiver spot next tomorrow during that second round of that draft. But man, Quay Walker is a freak athlete at linebacker. Instincts are. I have some questions in terms of his instincts. There's something that he could probably get some coaching there. But man, Devontae Wyatt going to Green Bay, that was a gut punch, because that's the guy I wanted to fall down somehow, some way to the Bears in the second round. So I don't know if they're gonna. I don't even see him as an ideal fit for that system either. So I mean, maybe they're gonna play him at a 5 technique, opposite of Kenny Clark, and then that's how they're gonna put some weight on him and figure out. But man, they got two Georgia Bulldogs off that dominant Georgia defensive unit, and I mean I'm telling you all. And then Lewis Seen, the fifth Bulldog to goes to the Vikings with that last pick in the first round. He's a safety that I like personally. I like better than Kyle Hamilton in terms of his physicality and what he brought to he was in the in terms of the coverage. There are some areas there where you could kind of go with Hamilton over him, but man, just the leadership, the physicality he brought to that secondary. I think Minnesota gets Lewis. As a little of a surprise pick, but that's a good player.
Yeah, indeed. Tell you what, Danny, why don't we go through the first round picks, and I'd love for you to comment a little bit, a couple of sentences or so on the picks. The very first round pick, the first pick of the first round was Treylon Walker, the edge out of Georgia, 6'5", 272 pounds. 35.5-inch arms. He ran a 4.51. Everyone expected Hutchinson to be the first overall pick up until a few days ago. What do you think it was about Walker that convinced the Jaguars that they should pick him over Hutchinson?
Traits. It's traits. It's more production over production, or projection, I should say, over production. With Hutchinson, the feeling is like, he is as good as he can get, right? There isn't really much of a high ceiling, if you will, with him. He's a good player, but I mean, the comp I have for Hutchinson was Chris Long, right? A good player, made a couple Pro Bowls, but not really someone that's a franchise changer. With Walker, his traits are something when you take a look at what he brings you. his stats weren't there, but I think a lot of that was probably how they use him at Georgia. They had him in a 3-4 defense. They had him lined up inside, over the guard a lot of times, kind of bunched up. So I think that might have been something that kind of held him back in terms of his stats. But, this is the guy that they think with that size, speed, length, combination, that he has a chance to develop at the next level and be a better pro than he was a college player.
And then Hutchinson goes to the Lions, 14 sacks last year, 16 and a half tackles for a loss. This guy is a mammoth man, 6'7", 260 pounds. The Lions have to be really, really happy. They didn't have to pull a Ryan Pace and trade up one pick to get their guy.
No, I mean, Hutchinson falls right to them. They're looking for an edge guy. He kind of fits that mold, more of a blue collar, hard-working kid. Again, he in terms of his, his strengths is his technique, right? In terms of his hand usage, his ability to be able to generate pressure off the edge. Is he the, he's not a bad athlete either. I mean, I don't want to knock his athletic ability, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of overall athletic ability, I think Walker kind of beat him there. But, in terms of production, getting to the quarterback, again, his hand usage is pretty defined. He's got the swipe, the rip, the swim. He's got a good combination of them. He's rushed from both a 3-point stance with a hand in the ground, the defensive end, and also stood up, in a 2-point stance. So he's got, hybrid tendencies as well. So they can utilize him in multiple fronts. So he brings a lot of, excitement to the Lions front seven there as well. So that was a big need for the Lions, and they went ahead and brought this kid in. I think that's going to be a nice pickup there too.
And then the Texans select 19-year-old Derek Stingley, 6 feet, 190 pounds. He made 25 starts for the Tigers last season, but he was limited to just 25 starts throughout his college career. He was limited to just 3 starts because he had a foot injury. Your evaluation on Stingley going number 3 overall?
Yeah, as a freshman, Stingley, what could have been a top 5 pick if he's eligible to come off of the draft. That's how good he was. And I remember in practice, there was talk about some stories in terms of, what he would do, match up with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in practice. I mean, that's how good this kid was. The last couple seasons have been inconsistent just mainly because of injuries. I know he had a Liz Frank foot injury. There are other couple injuries he had kind of held him back. So I think that was mainly what kind of, brought his grade down a little bit. But the Texans loved him. Casero really loved the kid. And I think he was just, said, what, the 2019 tape that he saw was like, again, a guy as a freshman could come in and probably, if he was eligible, could have been a top 5 pick. So they just kind of based it off of that. Probably did some research on them, just kind of figure out some of those injuries, make sure those medical red flags weren't there. And they just went ahead and they went, and he is a more physical corner, right? So Sauce Gardner is the guy that went, I believe he went 4th.
He went right afterwards. Yeah.
But Sauce Gardner is more of a press, he's a long corner, good recovery speed. He's a press kind of corner. Stingley is more of an all-around corner, right? He could press, he could play off man. He's good in terms of coming up, and supporting the run. He's got some physicality to his game as well. So his biggest thing was injuries. If he had stayed healthy, there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, he went top 3 anyway. I mean, this guy would have been just heralded as the best corner in the draft if he had stayed healthy the last couple of seasons at LSU.
And just for the record, indeed, Sauce Gardner went to the Jets, 6'3", 190 pounds. He started 28 games in 3 seasons. And opposing quarterbacks, like, they rarely threw his way, but when they did, they paid the price. 9 interceptions last season. Pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, he's a guy that, except length, press corner, he likes mirroring off the line of scrimmage. He's a guy that takes pride in terms of, being able to shut down a defense. A receiver. He's a guy that likes to go from side to side and follow receivers. So he's a guy that could develop into that true lockdown corner. For me, I like Sting a little bit better. Again, just because he's more of a physical corner. I think he's better in terms of run defense. And again, I'm just basing it off of my 2019 observation of Derek Stingley as a freshman. He came in there in LSU and was, one of the best corners in the entire, college football. So, but we'll see how it goes on. But I mean, I think both guys are going to have successful careers. I just like Sting a little bit better as long as he stays healthy.
Kevin Thibodeaux is landed in the perfect city for his personality. The New York Giants grabbed him at number 5, 6'4", 255 pounds. Very, very productive. 19 sacks, 35 and a half tackles for a loss in 32 games. He was athletic, was a team captain. He's got a great personality. If you watch tonight's draft, I mean, wow, what a showman. He is just perfectly made for the Big Apple, isn't he?
Yeah, Kayvon Thibodeaux from Oregon. Yeah, he was a guy that coming into the season was my number one prospect coming into this draft, and he's a guy that got knocked for maybe a lackadaisical work ethic or some plays on film where he kind of took some plays off, but the guy still produced 12 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. So I think I might have to reverse, but the guy's still productive, and he's a guy that hurt his ankle, sat out a couple games. Could have just said, you know what, I'm done, guys. I'm cashing it in. I'm going to be a top 5 pick. I'm not going to play. But no, he worked his way back, came back for his teammates, and played the rest of the season at Oregon. But yeah, he's getting dinged here for being a guy that supposedly doesn't give it all or doesn't love football. The guy is charismatic. The guy has interests outside of football in terms of business and in a career. So I that doesn't go well with a lot of these scouts. So I think that might have been the reason why they got knocked. But man, you put on the tape, you see the guy's first step explosiveness, quickness off the snap, his ability to bend around that corner, bend that edge, and fly into the quarterback. I think he went to a perfect system with the Giants, and when Wick Martindale was going to make him stand up as an outside linebacker at a 2-point stance, and just uses traits and athletic ability off the edge there. I think that's why I'm saying the Giants knocked out of the park with their first 2 picks.
Yeah, they really did. Then at the number 6, the Panthers chose. I love this pick for them. Ikanwu. I mean, this is a nasty offensive lineman. 6'4", 310 pounds. He started 27 games at left tackle, 4 at left guard during his 3 college seasons. He's got some versatility, and he has got a nasty attitude. I think that the Panthers are really going to love this pick.
Yeah, the kid from NC State stays local there in Charlotte, and they were going to go tackle. I think that's been the rumor from them coming out from about the last 3 weeks or so. I think they're scuttlebutt about quarterbacks. So no quarterback was going to go in the top 10 nor top 15 if there was as a team that's desperate just to make a splash. But yeah, Ekwonu, I think right now he's a more dominant run blocker than he is a pass protector. So there's an area of game that he's got to get better at, but. Neil and I talk about nasty offensive linemen. You put on this kid's tape and you see him, running down the field 15, 20 yards, flattening defensive backs and jumping on top of them, just for good measure. So this kid's got an ability to be a starter right away. Again, he's got to develop in terms of his overall, technique in terms of a pass blocker. He's not bad, but that's an area where he can get better at. But definitely for me, it was my top tackle.
And as you mentioned, you said you love the 2 picks for the New York Giants. Evan Neal was at number 7, durable, reliable, and huge. 6'8", 337 pounds. Started 40 games for Nick Saban, 15 at left tackle, 13 at left guard, 12 at right tackle. Durable. The only game he missed was because of COVID purposes. He's a great pick for the Giants.
Yeah, and I like him better because of that versatility, right? I like him better in the NFL as a right tackle than I do as a left tackle. I just think his profile fits better on the right side. And I think, the Giants with Andrew Thomas at the left side have an opening there on right tackle. They put him in a better spot there. I think that's where he's going to go ahead and succeed and just take off from there. So I think, they have a starting right tackle and a starting defensive outside linebacker with picks 5 and 7 tonight for the Giants. So that's why I think those are 2 really, really good fits, really good picks there for the Giants.
Do you think that the next team, the Atlanta Falcons, overreached with Drake London, the 6'4", 219-pound wide receiver from USC?
Was it overreach? Maybe a tad bit. I do like Drake London in terms of this prospect, but he's a different kind of prospect. He's more of that big body receiver. I comped him to a Mike Evans type. Evans has a little bit more speed, downfield speed than him, but and especially he's coming off of an ankle surgery. He wasn't able to run his 40 time at all in terms of the pro day at USC. So there's some questions there. I think he's going to be a nice big red zone target. I mean, you combine him with Kyle Pitts, you got some big receivers there in Atlanta. I just thought they might have gone with a little more speed to complement Pitts there, in terms of a guy like maybe Garrett Wilson or maybe even Chris Olave or something like that. Jamison Williams. I know Williams is coming off of an ACL. You got to wait for him, but just that speed element that they've lost with the last couple of years with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley leaving, and Russell Gage left this offseason. So that was a bit of a shock to me in terms of a surprise pick, I would say. They were going receiver, in my opinion, but I thought it was going to be Garrett Wilson instead of Drake London.
Yeah. The next pick, which was the 9th overall pick, Seattle Seahawks chose Charlie Cross, the offensive tackle from Mississippi State. I'm sorry that Neil isn't here because Neil helped recruit him over to Mississippi State. This guy all in all, he was probably my favorite left tackle in this draft because he just came from that pass heavy scheme, and in today's NFL with some almost 75% of the plays being called are pass plays. He just seems to have that pedigree that he's going to step in and be a great pass protector. Your thoughts on the Seahawks choosing Cross?
Yeah, I mean, for me, he was the more natural pass protector at left tackle. So we talked about Ike Ekwonu, having to kind of work on his technique in terms of just overall becoming a better pass protector, but he's a better run blocker.
Mm-hmm.
That's the opposite with Charles Cross. Cross is a better pass protector and just not really that great of a run blocker yet. So, it's still if you're looking for a true left tackle in terms of feet, ability to mirror at the line of scrimmage, keep your shoulders, square to the defender, has the length, the reach, the quick feet. Cross is that guy. There are times in the run game where I kind of wish he was a little bit more physical. I wish he was a little bit more nasty as well. Of course, there wasn't many opportunities like Iguano got and some of the other guys got in terms of run blocking because we talked about Leach's pass happy offense. But I think that's in there. Once he gets that area of his game squared away in terms of becomes a little better run blocker, I think then you have a full left tackle. But definitely a very, very good prospect, very good pick for the Seahawks, who now he's going to fill right into the Dwayne Brown slot that he left, who's obviously Brown, a free agent still. So I think he's going to slide right into that spot and be the starting left tackle for the Seahawks.
Rounding out the top 10, the Jets had that 10th pick, and they chose Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. He caught 70 passes last year, over 1,000 yards, 12 touchdown touchdown catches. He ran a 4.38 and had over 15 yards per reception in his college career. Outstanding prospect.
Yeah, this is the guy. Obviously, the trio at Ohio State last year, along with Chris Olave and Jaga Smith, are just special. And just think about it, guys. Jamison Williams had to transfer from Ohio State to Alabama to get some playing time, and that's how crazy, how talented that receiving core is at Ohio State. So I think Garrett Wilson is a guy that a bit undersized, about 6 feet, and he's not a guy that really towers over cornerbacks, but he's shifty, he's quick, he's got some good speed. And he's a guy that can go up and make a play on a football. He's got terrific body control, ability to contour midair and adjust to the throw and make a catch. I think this is a guy who has a chance to be a next level receiver here. That's something. This is the guy I thought Atlanta would have targeted. More of a speed, a little more a twitchy receiver than a Drake London. But he falls here to the Jets, and I think that's a heck of a pickup there.
Yeah, I am in the chat just congratulating Don Burr, our resident Detroit Lions fan, on a great draft. And I also asked him, it's going to be fun to see how the Lions screw this up. So because they really have selected some nice talent. All right.
Well, I mean, it's going to be hard to screw this one up. I mean, other than Jamison Williams coming off an ACL, that's the only thing is if, God forbid, if something doesn't come back normal with that kid. But everything reports are that it's a full speed of recovery. He should be back to 100% by October.
Mm-hmm. So let us go now to the 11th overall pick. New Orleans Saints got our guy, Chris Olave, the wide receiver.
Yeah, they actually traded up for this kid. They went up. They went from, I believe it was 14 to 11. Or I think it was maybe 16 to 11.
The Saints gave up a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick to move up to 16, from 16 to 11 to take Olave.
Yeah, so obviously a nice compliment there to Michael Thomas, another former Buckeye receiver. Thomas more of that bigger body possession type receiver, while Olave will give you that deep speed element to complement them. So I think that's a nice pickup there for the Saints. They obviously had another second first round pick, which we'll talk about later, to complement their offensive line too.
Mm-hmm. All right, with the 12th overall pick, it's the Detroit Lions, Don Burr's team, Jamison Williams II from Alabama. Now the Lions moved up. They gave up picks 32, 34, and 66 to acquire 12 and 46 from the Vikings. Interesting interdivisional trade. Williams is a 6'2", 180-pounder who is one of the most electrifying players in this draft.
Yeah, they moved up 20 spots, and all they did really was they gave up, I believe, a 3rd round pick because they swapped second rounds. And now, of course, the Vikings, they moved up in the 2nd round with the Lions, swapping those picks, but they got the 32nd pick.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they didn't get enough for their pick, but that's neither here or there. Yeah, Jamison Williams talked about speed, explosive receiver. He's a guy that, coming off tore his ACL in the national championship game. So he won't be ready to play until I think that the latest report I saw was October. So, you got to give some time there. But, assuming he comes back healthy, we just talked about this, he's going to be a guy that gives you that speed, that deep element to complement, Amon St. Brown on that team as well. So to go with Hutchinson and of course, DeAndre Swift in the backfield. So, of course, they still have Jared Goff as a quarterback. So I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, Bears fans, in terms of the Lions offense, they still have Jared Goff.
And Don just put Goff is a bridge quarterback. Yeah. Well, where does the bridge end?
Eventually the bridge is going to collapse if you have nothing to go to.
There you go. Excellent. All right. Moving forward, we have Jordan Davis, the outstanding defensive tackle from Georgia. Boy, did this guy really help himself in the combine?
Yeah.
The Eagles gave up a fourth, which was 124 and 2/5 to move up from 15 to 13 to grab this guy.
Yeah, big body defensive lineman. I think what he did at the combine was, because the knock on him coming in, this guy's just a 2-down player. You look at his size, you look at his height, you look at a guy that is going to probably be a nose tackle at the next level. He's going to just eat up blocks, maybe 2-gapper. But what he showed on his tape, and then obviously when he confirmed at the combine, was this kid's got some athletic ability to him. He's got some agility, he's got some quickness. Ran up, I believe, a 4.57 or something crazy like that, where it was numbers that some running backs weren't even matching. So
yeah, exactly.
I think that gave teams an ability to say, all right, this kid could be more than just a 2-down player. Now there's talk about maybe dropping some more weight on him, allowing him to get a little more even quicker. Of course, he'll be paired inside there with Fletcher Cox in the middle of that Eagles defensive line. So you got 2 formidable defensive tackles in the middle of that defensive line. So, you know me, Aldo, I love when the big boys, get selected. I like offensive linemen, I like defensive linemen. So I think the Eagles did a nice job of solidifying the middle of that defensive front.
Yeah, and the thing with Davis is that, when he had that fantastic combine and he was interviewed immediately afterwards, the guy has a winning personality, man. He's just effervescent with that personality. He reminded me a lot of Akeem Hicks, but a little bit more innocent because,
younger.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to be a great NFL player to keep an eye on. All right. Again, I'm sorry that Neil Stopchinski is not with us because the next pick would be one that he would love to talk about. Kyle Hamilton, the safety out of Notre Dame, went to the Ravens, 6'4", 220 pounds. I know that Neil tweeted out that the Ravens really appreciate their safeties and they got their guy with Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, they got the highest rated player on the board. I mean, he was a guy that a lot of people were talking about. He was going to go in the top 5, top 10. I thought that was crazy. I mean, Hamilton's a good player, a good prospect. But again, he goes to a team like the Ravens who, pretty much have a solid defense all around and just had a need there at safety. And then that was the highest rated player. And they went and pulled the trigger on Kyle Hamilton. I think he'll have a good career with the Ravens, but I don't know if he'll have a great All-Pro career. We'll see. The future, what the future holds with Kyle Hamilton, but definitely a talented player. A little long limb for me, but I think it's about 6 feet. I think it's 6'4". 6'4". But he just doesn't look as natural in terms of some of the movement skills back there as a safety, but definitely a guy that can be another weapon in the box if you bring him down in the box. He shows some range and playmaking ball skills at Notre Dame. So we'll see how that translates over to the next level. So, I think that was an area of need for them. And I think the Ravens went ahead and attacked it.
He had over 200 snaps from the slot position, which is one of the reasons that I was so intrigued with him. Because, a lot of times you can't get your player changes in, the hurry up offense and so forth. So he can move from that deep safety position and play the slot. That versatility was really very intriguing for me. I love the pick, and I think mid first round is more than appropriate for where he went. So let's move on to the 15th overall pick. That was Kenyon Green, the offensive guard out of Texas A&M. He started 35 games, 17 at left guard, 15 at right guard, 2 at right tackle, and 1 at left tackle during his 3 seasons at Texas A&M. Not some versatility there, right?
Yeah, this is a guy that's versatile as heck. You mentioned all the positions he's played. I think this is a guy that when I put tape on, I'm like, why isn't this guy being talked about possibly playing left tackle? He's got the size, he's got the athletic ability. But then eventually, as you watch him, because there was one game where he was forced into play left tackle versus Alabama, and he made that start there, and he looked okay. Then all of a sudden, you saw as the game got going more and more, fatigue might have kicked in. You saw kind of his lack of overall quickness to be able to cut off that edge of or that angle to get to that quarterback on the outside. So I think guard is probably gonna be his best position. And yeah, he's a guy this guy is a people mover. This guy will get into you, and he'll move guys backwards off their landmarks. So definitely a power player. I'm trying to think off the top of my head of which kind of system they're going to run out there in the Texans. I think they're running. It's
it's lovely.
Pep Hamilton, yeah. Well, it's Pep Hamilton, so I think they're running a version of the West Coast offense out there. So I think, obviously they're going to be heavy into the wrong game. So I think that this is a guy that's going to fit nicely there at guard for Houston.
Yeah. All right. So at number 16, this is interesting because you and I had a chance to interview Terry McLaurin down at the Senior Bowl. You and I walked away super impressed. Jahan Dotson reminds me a lot of Terry McLaurin. Does he remind you a lot of them of McLaurin? And if so, Dotson and McLaurin together could be a lethal combination, man.
McLaurin's about 6 feet 6'1", a little bit more. I believe McLaurin is about 6 feet.
You're taller. What are you, 6'1"?
I'm 6 feet.
Yeah, because you looked when I was the cameraman on that. You look taller than him. But anyway,
so maybe 5'11". But anyway, I think Dotson's around that height, 5'10", 5'11". But Dotson's more quicker. I think more shiftier. The thing with Dotson is remember McLaurin until the Senior Bowl, McLaurin was considered just a special teams guy.
Yeah.
And then he finally came out there and said, "Hey, the guys, I can play here. I can make some plays here as receiver." And sure enough, he's been a star at the next level. So I definitely think it'd be a nice compliment. The thing about the pick here in Dotson is terrific hands. A guy has got that extra gear to get down in the middle of the field. Early on he was kind of slotted as just a slot receiver.
Right.
Well, I think he'll make a lot of plays in the slot. I think he's a guy that could also be flanked out and be a guy that can play the X or play the Y as well. So we'll see how that turns out, but definitely a guy that brings that element of speed, brings that big play potential. And you bring on McLaurin, he's another kid that's looking for a contract extension. So could this possibly be a guy that becomes trade bait in the future? I'm not saying tomorrow or anything like that, but is Dotson brought in to possibly replace McLaurin after next year? We'll see how that goes.
I'd love to see McLaurin in a Chicago Bears uniform, but
you and I both.
Ryan Poles, yeah, right. Ryan Poles was very afraid about those prices that wide receivers are getting. So
sticker shock, man. I'm telling you right now.
Oh man, it is unbelievable. But that big contract, that TV contract, is going to come in place in place for the next contracts that are going to be negotiated. So it may not be that sticker shocky, for lack of a better way of putting it. At number 17, the LA Chargers chose Zion Johnson out of Boston College, 6'3", 312 pounds, 34-inch arms. He began his career at Davidson before catching on at Boston College, where he started 30 games, 18 at left guard, 12 at left tackle during his 3 seasons there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a kid both Neil and I loved. I mean, I loved Zion Johnson coming into the draft last year, but he ended up staying an extra year. And I think this is a guy that's going to fit right in there at left guard, right next to Rashawn Slater from last year's first-round pick. And I think the Chargers done a nice job of solidifying that left side of their offensive line. So, something that I would love to see the Bears do here is solidify their offensive line. But, this is a kid that plays play left tackle, play left guard. Down at Mobile, they asked him to go ahead and snap, take some snaps to center, and he starts snapping. So he gives you that position versatility, athletic kid. Kid, that plays hard, plays to the whistle, finishes blocks. I was a big fan of Zion Johnson. I think this kid's a day one starter at left guard for the Chargers. So I think that's another great selection for them. Yeah.
Once you started talking about him on this show, Draft on Tap, I started to look at him and saying, yeah, Danny's right. This guy's a special player. One of the other guys I think that you were in love with was Treylon Burks. And frankly, I wasn't in love with him as much as you are. And it's interesting. The Titans traded A.J. Brown to the Eagles for this 18th pick and a 3rd-round selection. And they acquired Burks, who is almost very similar to A.J. Brown, isn't he?
Yeah, that was my comp. My player comp for Treylon Burks was A.J. Brown because of the physicality in which they play. Now, A.J. Brown tested better in terms of his 40 time coming out of Ole Miss than Burks did. But you put on a tape. When I broke down his tape here on Draft on Tap, I showed you a play where Burks makes a catch downfield versus Alabama, and he runs away from the Alabama defense and he scores a long touchdown. So when you put his his game tape on, he's not a take a top off a defense kind of burner, but he's got good enough speed. But his name of the game is position versatility. You'd see him lined up in the backfield, in the slot, and the outside. They see him, they hand the ball off to him as a running back as well. So that's why a lot of the national media was kind of comping him to Deebo Samuel. I don't think he was that kind of a player. I think he's more of a AJ Brown, which means what? Which means a physical receiver. He's about 6'2", 200 and some pounds. He's a guy that can get downfield. He can box out defensive backs, go up and make a play on the football. He's a guy that's strong at the catch point. Defenders are usually hanging over his back to try and get that ball away, but he's got some good physicality, though. I think he's just a nice physical receiver. And like I said, that's why I comped him to AJ Brown. And sure enough, the Titans go ahead and trade AJ Brown and draft this kid to come in and take a spot.
Yeah, interesting move. We could talk about that for an hour. At 19, the Saints picked the offensive tackle out of Northern Iowa, Trevor Penning. What do you think about him?
Yeah, Teron Armstead was gone. He's a guy that I wanted for the Bears, but he ended up in Miami. So they needed a left tackle, and I think Penning will fit right in there. The thing about Penning is he's a sneaky good athlete, but what you love about him is his nastiness, man. At the Senior Bowl, he was taking his teammates and he was burying them into the ground. These are guys he's practicing against his own teammates, and he's him and Tyreek Smith from Ohio State, the kid. There are a couple times they almost went to blows. That's how nasty this kid is, and he just doesn't give a crap. He's a guy that plays through the whistle. He's been down there training with Duke Merriweather at his academy, getting honing his pass protection skills there as well. So I think he's another kid that's gonna come right in and slip right into our starting lineup at left tackle. Is gonna be the Saints left tackle starting next year.
All right, now we get to that pick, number 20. I don't think Mike North is a happy man right now because the Steelers chose a quarterback, Kenny Pickett. This really is going to be Ben Roethlisberger's successor. I know I'm stealing the words right out of your mouth, right, Danny?
Yeah, the whole Mitch Trubisky fan club led by our Mike North. I think they might just set back down again. I think Trubisky got Mike Glennon tonight. That's what he did. He got Mike Glennon because they gave him this contract and thinking he's going to come in and compete. Now, is he going to get a chance to compete? He's going to get a chance to compete. But I think if Trubisky say wins the position coming out of training camp, but I'd give him till week 2 or week 4. Between week 3 and week 4 before this kid takes over. I think Kenny Pickett for me was my top rated quarterback. Not saying much in terms of this class, but he's a guy for me was 6'3". He's a pretty good athlete. He's not the Malik Willis athlete in terms of that quick twitch fiber, but he's a guy that's 6'3". He has a decent arm strength. He doesn't have great arm strength, but he's a guy that played in a pro style system. He's for me was the most pro ready quarterback of the bunch. So I think him coming in and getting an opportunity to compete in his back. Remember, the Steelers and the Pitt Panthers, they share the same facilities. So it's like Mike Tomlin and some of the Steelers executives, they could go and watch Pitt practice. So they know this kid inside out already, right? So they have, if there's any inside information, inside knowledge, they get it. And they had the pick of the group. No quarterback was taken up until this point, and they went in and their grades match my grades because they said Pickett is a better quarterback, and that's what they did. So I think Kenny Pickett will probably be the starter within week 4, week 5 of next season.
At 21, the Chiefs selected one of your favorites in this draft, Trent McDuffie, the cornerback, and the Chiefs actually moved up from 29 to 21 and gave up a 3rd and a 4th for McDuffie. Your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I love this kid. And I think they were kind of worried that maybe the Packers were going to take him, McDuffie, and then they kind of jumped ahead of the Packers at 22 to go ahead and take McDuffie. I love this kid. This is a guy that can line up on the slot, he can line up on the outside, tough, smooth, athletic. Is a guy that can be sticky in coverage. In terms of run support, a guy can if he's off coverage, he can plant, kick, and transition quickly, come downhill and be able to wrap up and tackle. The other thing is he's about 5'11", so he doesn't have the greatest size, but definitely a guy that can be a top-notch corner. So I think this is a pretty damn good pick for the Chiefs.
Yeah, indeed. Then the Packers give Aaron Rodgers a slap in the face and choose a linebacker out of Georgia, Quay Walker, 6'4", 241 pounds. He has length. He can move pretty good, 4.5 to 40. You like him, don't you?
Yeah, he's an athletic linebacker. This guy, he's a little rough around the edges. He's not as instinctive as I like some of the other linebackers. Like, for example, his teammate, Nakobe Dean, who was at the draft, who's still actually on the board, who's still available, he's more instinctive, but he doesn't have the size, the length, the speed combination that Quay Walker has. He's a guy, like if you think about when the Bears, when they got Brian Urlacher, he was a former safety converted to play linebacker, just a big athletic kid. I think Quay Walker's in the same kind of mold here. Might even be a better overall athlete too. We'll see. But I think this is a kid that they can they know he needs some work. He's probably going to be, I'm thinking he could probably start next year. I'm not even sure. So we'll see how that goes. But definitely, guys, got tremendous potential. Again, you're going with upside here in terms of what he could do. But I think this is a guy that's going to be a linebacker for them for years to come.
At pick number 23, the Bills moved up a couple of slots to get their cornerback out of Florida, Kair Elam.
This is a kid that I'm not high on. I know a lot of people. A lot of people like him.
I love him.
His tape was too inconsistent. A lot of times, you see him play great coverage. You stick it to a receiver, and the next play, he's kind of like off. He gets spun around and turned, and he's lost. So, and also his run defense wasn't as consistent as I thought. As I liked for it to be. A bigger corner. Definitely comes from NFL bloodlines. His Matt Elam was I believe his uncle. And then so he's got some relatives that played in the NFL. I just didn't think he was consistent enough. And I know a lot of people loved him. It was more like a love-hate kid with this kid. So when they jumped up and they took this kid, I was kind of shocked because I thought they would go for Jermaine Johnson, the pass rusher. They're still on the board because what's one of the things that the Bills still need is, and I know they signed Von Miller in the offseason, but still, you cannot never have too many pass rushers. And I thought when they jumped up, a kid like Jermaine Johnson sitting out there, a guy who might have been, top 11, top 15 pick, now sitting there at 23. I just figured this is the guy that they're coming up here for. But they came up for Elam. Obviously, hopefully it works out for them. He's a guy that to me was just too inconsistent on tape. I just couldn't, get a good feel for him.
All right, and then by the way, you get a nice compliment there from Vinny P.
Thank you, Vinny.
You were a guest on his show along with Neil. All right. You're probably not happy with this pick, too, based on some of your reporting on Tyler Smith, if I recalling correctly.
To me, it's high. I mean, I like Smith as a prospect. I mean, I think he's got tremendous potential. He's got length. He's got the nasty gene that we all like in our offensive lineman that both Neil and I like and see in our offensive lineman. But a little bit too raw. There's a lot of times you see him kind of reaching and grabbing and not moving his feet. But a lot of things like I think Neil touched on last night was with him is just coaching. You got to coach him up and get him better. But I think first round was a bit too rich for me for this kid. But they went ahead and pulled the trigger here with the Cowboys. So I know they lost the left guard Connor Williams. Tyrone Smith is getting up there in age, so maybe they'll plug this kid in here at left guard. Kind of have him learn from Tyrone Smith, and by the time Smith is gone, they'll just kick him out to left tackle. I mean, it'll be the future left tackle. We'll see how that goes with Tyler Smith and the Cowboys.
Yeah. Were you surprised with the 25th overall pick, Tyler Linderbaum, the center out who went to the Ravens?
I thought he was a first-round player. I just was hoping he dropped down to the Bears somehow, some way, because
Really?
I think it's a nice fit at center. You kick out Lucas Patrick to guard. You take care of two positions with one draft pick there. But yeah, I mean, the Ravens lost their center. It's free agency, so I think that was a need. The only thing is, it's for me, the fit's a little different. They're more of a power gap-based blocking scheme, unless they're making some changes that I'm not aware of. Linderbaum is more of a stretch zone kind of athletic type of blocker, right? Although he's a wrestler, so he's good at leverage and getting leverage on defensive linemen and moving them off their spots. So obviously they know what they're going to do there with him. But top center in the draft, I think this guy is going to be very, very good for years to come with the Ravens. I like this pick better than Hamilton for them.
Oh, okay. At 26, the Jets chose Jermaine Johnson. They actually traded a second rounder and a third rounder and a fifth rounder for this pick and a fourth rounder. You think they they were smart in making this pick for Jermaine Johnson, the edge player out of Florida State.
Yeah, that was a need. I mean, that was a need. There were some mocks that had Jermaine Johnson going to them at number 10, right? And they ended up getting Garrett Wilson there because they probably didn't think Garrett Wilson was going to get past Atlanta. This is a guy that they needed. Robert Saleh had him. The Jets had him down at the Senior Bowl. Another reason why coaching down at the Senior Bowl is such a huge advantage for these coaching staffs, because you get to know these players on a one-on-one basis. So obviously the Jets have that relationship with Jermaine Johnson. They know him inside out. There's a reason why he dropped. I'm not sure if it's off the field, personal or medical, but there's a reason why he dropped this low. So, but the Jets were comfortable with him, obviously, because like I said, they coached him at the Senior Bowl. So this is a guy, man, he was unstoppable, unblockable down in Mobile. He was so damn impressive that after 2 practices, he's like, I'm out of here. Peace out, guys. He just left and was probably just guaranteed it was going to be a first-round pick. So definitely a great pickup for them. Definitely a neat position. I think all 3 of their first-round picks are probably going to be starting for them next year. So I think that's a hell of a haul-in for the Jets on the first night.
I didn't add up all of the trades, but here's another one. Jacksonville Jaguars gave up their 33rd pick, which, of course, is in the second round, 106th pick and 180th to move up and choose Devin Lloyd, the linebacker out of Utah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, obviously they lost Miles Jack, who's now with the Steelers, so they're at a void there at middle linebacker, and I think Devin Lloyd just kind of steps right into it. Big, rangy, lanky defender. He's a team leader. He's a guy that was the Pac-12 defensive player of the year last year at I believe 20 tackles for loss and about 8 sacks from a middle linebacker. So he's a guy that can rush a passer. In terms of, if you set him on blitzes, he's physical enough in terms of at the line of scrimmage where he can stack and shed and be able to get to the ball carrier. So I think this is a guy that's going to be their starting middle linebacker starting next year. All
right. And then at 28, the Packers chose Devontae Wyatt. And there are some concerns about Wyatt. Do you know what they are? And I'm saying that because I'm seeing a report here out of The Athletic. What are the concerns with Wyatt, and do you think this was a good pick for the Packers?
That was a gut punch for me. I was hoping this kid was available for the Bears. There are some off-the-field stuff that's come out, right? And I don't know what it is specifically, but typically at this time of the draft, you hear this kind of stuff, and you think, all right, a team is trying to put stuff out there to have this kid come down and fall down. And he didn't fall too far. I mean, if anywhere else, I mean, he still went in the first round.
Right.
I just don't see the fit because they're more of a 3-4 defense. I think this guy is tailor-made 3 technique and a 4-3. But who am I to question what the Packers are going to do? They're probably going to put some weight on him, probably start him as a 5 technique, cat quick ability, get back and get into the backfield. This is a guy that's going to be a disruptor up front. I definitely hated seeing him going to the Packers.
Yeah. All right. And then at 29, the Patriots chose Cole Strange, somebody that we've been talking a lot about lately here at the Bar Room. You obviously like this pick, right?
I love this kid. I just thought this guy's going to be available in the second or third round. I didn't think it'd be a first round pick. Again, another guy, 5-year starter, 6'6", 300 some pounds, position versatility. This guy's can play left tackle. He's play left guard. He can play right guard. He even played some center as well. So this guy gives them, the Patriots, they lost their center. Ted Karras is now with the Bengals, so I think he could probably go in there, maybe fill there, possibly fills in a guard. See what I think they traded Shaq Mason to the Buccaneers, so maybe he could play guard for them. I love the kid. Guy's a guy that plays hard through the whistle, has a nastiness that we've talked about. Multiple of these offensive linemen. Talk about position versatility, 5-year starter. I think first round was a bit too rich for my blood.
Yeah.
But you know what? As long as that guy's going to be a starter for you for years to come and he works out, and I like the kid a lot, I just thought you probably could get him in a later, second, day 2 probably.
And then at 30, the Chiefs chose George Karlaftis, the edge player out of Purdue. Frankly, I don't know much about George. What can you?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. This is the one guy that I thought should not have been a first round pick. I don't have a first round grade on him. I know I'm a minority there. He's a guy that's an edge rusher. He's a guy that doesn't have enough bend, enough wiggle in terms of being an outside pass rusher. The Chiefs are going to play him as a defensive end. He's good against the run. He's stout against the run. The reason why I think he's going to have trouble, there's a lot of times at Purdue, you see his tape, he's just a split second too late because he doesn't have the loose hips, the ankle flexion that you look for in your outside linebackers, the guys with the bendability. You know, we see Robert Quinn when he bends that corner, bends that edge the way he gets perpendicular to the ground. You know, Karlaftis doesn't have that. You know, he's more of a power rusher, just a bull rusher. So I just don't see this guy as a you know, a consistent sack producing defensive end. So, you know, there are some packages where they kick him inside at Purdue, have him rush over the guard. So maybe, you know, Steve Spagnuolo with you know, he was with the Giants when they went to that what they call a NASCAR package, where they have 4 pass rushers going, you know, at one time. So maybe you have a package designed for this kid to come in and maybe rush in as an interior defensive lineman on third downs or passing situations. We'll see how it goes, but he's just not a kid I was very high on at all. So this to me was a pick that I don't think it's going to work out that well.
Dax Hill then was chosen at 31, the safety out of Michigan. Very, very versatile type player. You know, it's interesting. I think it was Jordan in the chat that said that, you know, there's so many different ways to play safety right now. And this guy probably plays half a dozen of those different.
This guy's going to be the guy that's going to play more corner than he's going to be playing safety. He's got that ability to be able to play a corner. So I think you take advantage of this kid at cornerback before you move him inside to safety, because his ability to come down and cover the slot, you know, quick twitch, you know, be able to loose hips, be able to open up a mirror at the line of scrimmage. So like I like this kid as a big corner, or maybe even a slot corner, than as a true safety. So we'll see how they use him there at Cincinnati.
And closing out the first round, it was the Vikings. They traded their number 12 overall pick and their number 46 so they could acquire an extra pick. And those picks are the 32nd, the 34th, and 66th. Lewis Seen, the safety out of Georgia.
I love this kid. This is the guy I love. I mean, in terms of talk about bringing that swagger to the defensive backfield, being a leader back there, bringing in physicality. You see the way this kid runs the alley in terms of his run support, just like a missile coming downhill and being able to just knock guys off their feet. So I think this is going to be a nice pairing with Harrison Smith and that defensive secondary. A little bit of a surprise pick, to be honest with you. You know, they're transitioning there for a 3-4. Obviously, Ed Donatel is their defensive coordinator there. They're going to a 3-4 defense. And I don't know what don't have their information in terms of who they've signed and who they brought in so far in free agency, but I would think they did want to get more of the front 7 guys done first. So I got to see what their lineup currently looks like. I think they lost Anthony Barr. So I don't know who they have in terms of their 3-4 outside linebackers or whatnot, but you know, good player. Definitely a good player. Definitely, I think, should have gone in the first round. I just thought that maybe their needs might be better served elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that the final pick was a safety because we've been having a debate here at the bar room. Neil is Neil, and I agree with Neil. Neil sees a lot of value in safeties. And so it's ideal that you were talking about safeties and that you say you'll really like this player. A safety. Let's bring Neil Stopchinski in. Neil, how are you, my man?
I'm getting my ass kicked by technology over here. In an absolute fucking street fight.
You are at the rooftop of your apartment building in the near northwest side of Chicago, where I grew up. I actually grew up about a mile from where you live. You look safe. I was never safe in the neighborhood.
A lot of changes in this neighborhood since you've been here, kid.
No shit. I move out and get better. See how that is?
Yeah, right. Yeah. All the leaves, all of a sudden the neighborhood gets safer. Go figure.
Indeed. So Neil, share with us your highlights of the first round, and then Danny, feel free to jump in, and you guys can debate any differences you might have on these picks.
Man, you know what? I posted up earlier. I am here for the chaos. And that's kind of what we got, man. Trades on trades, GMs wheeling and dealing, making moves and shaking. I love it. I absolutely love it. Guys are risking it all to get the guys that they want. Been a few surprises. I mean, obviously we had a record, 5 straight defensive guys taken in the very top end of the draft. The offensive tackles that were taken, I think I posted earlier, it's basically grand theft left tackle right now for anybody that was taking a bookend, because you're getting a steal past the 5th pick if you're taking Iquanu, Neal, or Charles Cross. So that was pretty amazing for those teams to get a guy where they were for the value that you get. Just phenomenal right there. We saw 6 receivers taken. So, by my count, that's getting close to Christian Watson in range. You know, the guy that a lot of our fans love, a guy that both me and Danny love. You got a few more receivers in there that we both love, like Pierce and Tolbert, that are definite, round 2, day 2 guys. Mechie and Bell throw in there as well. Sky Moore, Velus Jones. So in terms of taking a wide receiver on day 2, we still have a ton of options that are going to fit very nicely. Just moving back on down, the draft here. I think, once we got into pick, I want to say about 25, I started to take some notes on guys that were still there, guys that might fall to the second round and will be right for the taking at 39. And then like 4 in a row almost, Wyatt, Strange, those go back to back, just, straight punches to the nutsack. And then a guy like Dax Hill, who I absolutely love ever since the first time I saw him out of the state of Oklahoma at Mississippi State. He goes at 31 the Cincinnati Bengals, and their safety room all of a sudden is absolutely stacked. And I absolutely love that. But, Dax Hill is one of those guys that is probably one of the most versatile DBs in this entire draft, and he would be an amazing fit for the Bears, both in terms of his athletic ability, in terms of his length, in terms of his physicality. That kid can bring some wood and also be a ball hawk. That guy can flip his hips and cover in space. Absolutely love that kid. And then, again, back-to-back DBs I absolutely love. Louis C. I keep arguing over and over and over again. We'll get into another hour-long debate with you, Danny, about how important I think the safety position is. Louis C. is a dude I wish we had here in Chicago. I know it's not a top priority take in terms of what we need to do with the 39th pick and perhaps not even what we need to do with the 48th pick. But man, if it was going to be there at 39, if I'm polls, I'm at least giving it a wink and a thought about it, because man, you need a dude back there that can bring the heat, make some receivers think about some things when they're going across the middle. It's a leadership guy. And I mean, in terms of all these safeties that I've watched, very few of them actually stood out on TV copy. Watching the game live, that kid absolutely stood out. But I mean, we're going into day 2 now, and I still have a lot of marks on my paper right now, on my little makeshift board I have here to the side of my screen. And we still have options at left tackle. We still have options at 3 technique. We still have a ton of options at wide receiver. We have maybe a couple options at interior offensive line. I cannot believe Strange went where he did. I also cannot believe Tyler Smith went where he did. Those are two of the big surprises.
I was gonna ask you, like those are 2 guys that I know we both liked. I mean, we both love Strange, and I think that's rich for me. I thought because we were talking about him in the 2nd or 3rd round, possibly not high. Was it 22nd? They took him or 26? I forgot. I know they traded down. But
you got Tyler Smith at 24, and then Strange at 29.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I love the kid, but man, I think first round was I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, neither did I. I thought there was no chance that either of these 2 kids were going to go in the first round. And even Tyler Smith went at 24. But, again, I mean, give the GMs credit for taking the guy that they love. I always say, trust your evaluation, trust your eyes. If you're in love with a particular player and you don't want to take chances, feel free to go take the kid. I'm not sure where Dallas is picking next. I'm not sure where the Patriots are picking next. But, obviously Bill Belichick loves a guy like Cole Strange the same way we love a guy like Cole Strange, right? Tyler Smith is probably a little bit further along than in terms of needing to be developed than Cole Strange picked at 24. It's crazy stuff, but hey, you kind of halfway love to see surprises like that, because now.
Well, I think this draft was, not to cut you off, I think this draft was a little bit different, because a lot of teams, if you poll these teams, they only had 12 or 14 first round grades on players. Right. So I think the second half of that first round was going to be guys they had 2nd and 3rd round picks on them. I think the Patriots were like, they trade down once. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to trade down again. It just didn't have anybody interested coming up to jump up there and get that pick. But they're like, you know what? We have a 2nd round, maybe 3rd round grade on this kid. Most of these players now are going to be 2nd rounders anyway. Might as well just pull a string, get that 50 round under the kid, and we'll pull a thing here. I think that's why
100%.
You see guys like Tyler Smith and Cole Strange going in the bottom half of that first round, because this draft wasn't top heavy in terms of first round talent, but it was filled with depth. That's why you want to get as many picks as you can in those middle rounds to get depth players here.
Right, exactly. So, like I said, we're going to day 2 with a bunch of options now. And, arguably my favorite corner on the board, Andrew Booth, is still there. Kyler Gordon's still there. Zion McCollum, who I think could be a back end of the 3rd round, is a guy that's still there. Martin Emerson, same way, is still there. Alontae Taylor. You got 1, 2, 5 using advanced math, quick counting corners right there that, the both of us really like. And then that's not counting guys like Kobe Bryant, Monteric Brown, Damari Mathis, guys that we had talked about extensively on the show that we also are very high on, that we could find, early on day 3. What's really interesting to me now is that, just kind of kicking off to the side. I have a couple positions off to the side here, right? I have linebacker and safety off to the side. Kind of paying attention to those positions. Got Nakobe Dean, Christian Harris, and then Tyndall, which we expected that particular guy to be there. He's probably a round 3, type of player, but specifically Nakobe Dean, Christian Harris, those are 2 guys that you can argue day 1. A lot of people expected Nakobe Dean to be a day 1 guy, and he's still there. You look at to the left, Jalen Petrie is a guy that could have been argued for day 1, and he's still there for day 2 at safety. Another guy that could be very versatile, could play some corner as well. So those are the interesting positions that, again, if they fall deep enough to 39 or 48, you at least have to entertain the thought a little bit. But I still think that, as we have talked about extensively on the show for 4 months now, take care of the trenches with 39 and or 48, and look at wide receiver, who's available at both of those picks, and weigh your options according to need and strength and the ranking on the board.
I think one thing that's working in the Bears' favor and Ryan Poles' favor, especially if he's looking to trade down and garner more draft capital in that 2nd round, is only 1 quarterback went. I thought initially we're like, the more quarterbacks go, the better for the Bears. But with only Kenny Pickett going in the 1st round, teams that are bypass quarterback in the 1st round, teams like Detroit, teams like Atlanta, teams like Seattle, those guys are going to, depending, because I'm looking at the 2nd round and everything stays the way that it is right now, other than maybe Tennessee, maybe the Giants looking at a quarterback. I'm not sure any of these teams are going to be looking at a quarterback. So teams like, say, the Falcons, who want to jump up ahead of the Seahawks, who have back-to-back picks after the Bears, Atlanta might say, you know what, we want Malik Willis, and they might be able to go ahead and finagle a 3rd or maybe a 4th and drop down a couple slots with Atlanta and go from 39 to, say, was it like 43. Right. So you go down 4 slots and maybe get a 4th round pick or something like that. That's something to keep an eye on as well. So maybe, Desmond Ridder dropping, obviously Matt Corral dropping, these teams that want these quarterbacks in the 2nd round might be looking at the Bears potentially as a trade up target to see, if they or if someone wants Nakobe Dean, right, as a middle linebacker. So these players dropping can be good for the obviously good for the Bears, because not necessarily that the Bears are going to take them, but other teams are going to want to jump up there and give Ryan Poles that draft ammunition he's looking for.
Yeah, and we've seen already on a couple of these deals, teams giving up 3 picks on day 2, day 3, somewhere in the neighborhood of the top 110, 120 picks in order to move up and get the pick that they need. And so yesterday, when I'm thinking that trade that I pulled with the Broncos and that mock that I presented, well, I thought that was a little bit of a fleece. That ended up starting to look like a little bit more of a reality. You can give up one of these 2nd round picks and get 3 picks in return in round 3 or 4, and we can still end up with 5 picks in the top 110, 120 and address every need that's on the board. Still have some stuff to play with on day 3 and rounds 5 and 6. So that's the interesting thing to me.
If they make a trade and get picks so they can get Ariza in the round 4 area, I think that's going to be a solid move in your department, isn't it?
100%. I would take in the 1st
round. Get the punter you want.
I would have taken Dax Hill or Lewis Cine and Matt Ariza in the 1st round. Would have traded up for him. Done.
Yeah.
Not really.
But,
we're all having fun here, right?
So it's funny because we talked about, Aldo, I touched on the AJ Brown trade, and remember the comp that I have for AJ Brown, for Treylon Burks was AJ Brown. It's funny, Tennessee must have the same comp because they just ended up trading and using that pick for
get the same guy.
Yeah, get the same guy. So I obviously AJ Brown's a little bit more faster in terms of, I think he ran a 4.38 40 coming out of the combine. He's just a freak athlete.
AJ Brown did?
Yeah, coming out of the combine, he was.
I thought he was more of a 4.5.
No, I think someone correct me. Could someone in the chat? Can you guys take a look at what AJ Brown ran at the combine? I thought it was 4.38 or 4.4, something like that. But I mean, I know Treylon Burks. I made no bones about it. I'm a huge fan of the kid. He ran a 4.5 something at the combine. I mean, I put that tape on versus Alabama. And he's running away from defenders.
So about 4.5.
Who AJ Brown 4.49?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he's a little bit faster. So I think that's something. But I mean, I just when you put the tape on, I think they're very identical players. And I think just the Tennessee said, you know what, we're not going to pay this kid $100 million. They already had Ryan Tannehill is making $30+ million next year on their book. So look for Tennessee as a team that might go for a quarterback here. Bringing that heir apparent to Tannehill and try and move on from Ryan Tannehill, especially after that last playoff loss. So what are your thoughts on that AJ Brown trade with the Eagles?
I responded with a GIF, and it was of one of my favorite comedians, Chris D'Elia, just going, "What are we doing? We gave up an established receiver and picks to get the same guy that hasn't been established in the NFL." It just seemed like straight from the department of redundancy department. I didn't really get that one, but the evaluation is what it is. He's a big, strong, fast, explosive, fast kid that, again, doesn't have the elite speed that you like, but he's got enough speed, and he's a big playmaking Jesse, right? That's what coaches call guys, Jesse's, big playmaking Jesse's. I thought it was just hilarious.
And the other thing after this first round, and I said this earlier in the show to Aldo, I said, dude, NFC North got good. The NFC North got good tonight. With the Lions and their 2 picks. I know they got to wait on Jameson Williams. I know they still have a bridge quarterback in Jared Goff, so we'll see what happens there. But man, those are some pretty good picks there. I loved seeing with Minnesota, I think the Packers got good. Devontae Wyatt we touched on already. Quay Walker is he's an athletic. He's still not as instinctive as some of the other linebackers, but man, his play speed, his ability to be able to get to the ball carrier with some physicality is special, man. I think he's going to be a long-term starter for them as well. So I think all 3 teams got a little bit better. The only thing with seeing is I didn't think that was a huge need. Now looking at their roster, I was talking to Aldo. I'm not sure what they did on free agency, but I forgot they did sign Darius Smith to play outside linebacker opposite of Danielle Hunter. So I guess that took care of that problem. And they got Harrison Phillips from Buffalo to be more of that North tackle, and they got Dalvin Thompson as well. So maybe they just figured to take the highest rated player on their board. And that's why they went with Cena. I just thought they were going to go more defense, and especially when you do a conversion from a 4-3 to a 3-4. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the player, I think I like that kid.
Yeah,
NFC North got good tonight.
Yeah, 100%. That pick by Green Bay taking Devontae Wyatt, man, that was a swift kick to the nutsack. And I know, Greg Gabriel commented on my thing, like you can't worry about where he goes. You figured he was going to be off the board anyways. I thought, yeah, I get that. I'm totally 100% with you. But at the same time, I'd rather him not be in the division, and especially not at our rival. You know what I mean? I'd rather not see him twice a year in the most important game of the year. Man, they definitely got a lot better. I've kind of agreeing with Aldo a little bit. I thought it was also pretty hilarious that once again they screw Aaron Rodgers. They screw with him. Don't give him an offensive playmaker.
Yeah, but watch what they're going to do tomorrow. They'll probably end up with either Alec Pierce or Christian Watson. Watch, and then we're going to be here in Chicago laughing last, right? Because I think tomorrow they have the
Green Bay goes. He picked 21 tomorrow, 53 overall.
Yeah, so that could be
53 overall. They go 59 overall.
Yeah, so they could package those 2, move up, and simply move up and get the best receiver they want. Whether it's Christian Watson, whether it's Alec Pierce, Sky Moore still out there. So I wouldn't laugh 92. At the Packers until after it's done. Which pick in the first round was your biggest head scratcher? You'd say.
Man, that's a tough call. Again, like the trade that Tennessee, executed to get Treylon Burks. Again, I just sat there like, yeah, what are we doing? To To be honest with you, I feel like everybody did a really good job. I like most of what everybody did. There's a lot that I really like. There's a lot that I felt were phenomenal fits. You know, Jahan Dotson in the almost the top half of the draft, I thought was a little bit of a stretch, right?
Yeah.
I expected Jameson Williams to just fall a little bit, but you know,
For
you're
me, it
right,
was
right there. You're banking on the elite talent that he is.
right.
You're banking on him to come back 100%. And I think I would take the same gamble if I had 3 picks in the first round.
For me, the biggest head scratcher was
I had
Buffalo trading up to 23 and taking Kaiir Elam when I thought for sure they were
That's right. They
probably
did trade up, didn't they?
Yeah, I thought for sure
Yeah.
they're going to get a guy like Jermaine Johnson, who slipped, and I'm not sure. Again, I was telling Aldo, I'm not sure if there was a medical issue, if there was some off the field stuff. I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything. But Buffalo, who obviously we all remember their last game, they couldn't stop a nosebleed, right? There were 13 seconds, and what are you going to do when you go up against Patrick Mahomes and offenses like that? The more pass rushers you got, I know they signed Von Miller, but the more pass rushers you got, the more the merrier, right? And I just thought I move up when I saw that trade up. I'm like, for sure they're going for a Jermaine Johnson, and they go for a Kaiir Elam, who I told Aldo I wasn't that big of a fan of. I mean, I just saw too much inconsistencies on tape. I just saw too much passiveness in terms of his run support. There are sometimes he looked like a number 1 corner, sometimes he looked like a number 4 corner. I just wasn't too enthralled with his overall tape. I just didn't think he would have been a first round pick. But skill set wise, trait wise, he's got the size, he's got the athletic ability, and all that stuff you want to see. We'll see. Maybe they'll coach him up and he'll be, an all pro. I just his tape off Florida was just too inconsistent. So that to me was my biggest head scratcher.
I'm with you. I'm not a big fan of Kaiir Elam either. Not a big fan of Florida guys in general. But I can't remember who it was that made the comment. Aidan Hutchinson's overrated. I disagree. I think he's a long, athletic, playmaker. I don't like his arm length, but he does things to make up for the fact that his arm length isn't elite, right? He's got some moves that allow him to win on a consistent basis. I love the fact that the kid played high school ball in Michigan, plays college ball in Michigan. Now he's playing his pro ball in Michigan. I mean, that's kind of like one of those dream come true like type of storylines. That's fun to write about. And if he ends up being like an all-time great or at least like a 10-year All-Pro, I mean, that's storybook stuff. That makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside, right?
See, for me, Hutchinson, my player comp was Chris Long, right? Is a good player. A guy that came out was a top 4 pick out of Virginia. Made a couple Pro Bowls, had a good long career. Solid defensive line. And for me, with Hutchinson, I love about him is his versatility. You could brush him, in a 3-point stance. You could stand him up in a 2-point stance. His hand usage is next level. I mean, you got the swipe, the rip, the swim.
Yeah.
He's got the whole package in terms of using his hands and getting that leverage on the offensive lineman. So, I mean, is he closer to his ceiling now than say Treylon Walker? Obviously, I think that's what Jacksonville went with, was the traits at Walker and the potential he has to grow and get even better than what he showed at Georgia. So, but Hutchinson, whoever made a comment about Hutchinson being overrated, you haven't watched his kid's tape. I mean, and then I even touched his motor. The guy plays with a nonstop motor. It's like a maniac out there. So, definitely, I think that's what I'm saying. The Lions got better because that was one of their bigger needs was defensive, edge rusher. And I think the fact it gives you the ability to play him in multiple fronts is even a plus. And that motor, I think, fits right in perfectly with the Lions and that whole regime there. And again, Jameson Williams, he's got that big play potential, that speed. Just how stacked is Ohio State's receiving core, where Jameson Williams had to transfer to Alabama to play and show that type of talent. So, but yeah, I mean, the only unfortunate thing about him, if it wasn't for the ACL, this kid's probably a top 6 pick. Probably, I think Atlanta for sure goes with Jameson Williams if he's 100% instead of Drake London. That was a head scratcher for me a little bit. I like Drake London. I've comped him to Mike Evans, but I thought Atlanta would go with Garrett Wilson, a quicker, shiftier, a little bit more explosive receiver. So that was one thing there. But yeah, Jameson Williams, once he gets healthy, he's back to 100%. Coupled with Aidan Hutchinson and see what they do the next couple of days. I mean, I think the Lions are getting good and getting good quick.
Yeah. Don Burr said something like, I'm just going to live in the Bears backfield or whatever. I wonder if Don Burr's ever been critical of the Lions. Has there ever been a point where Don Burr has said anything negative about the Lions, or is it always shit talk and positivity?
I believe that there was a chat room quote from Don. This was in the middle of last season where he said that Matthew Stafford was a bitch. And now he's a Super Bowl quarterback.
I mean,
Am I right, Don?
there was what was his face that does sports writing out of Detroit called Stat Patrick. I mean, there was a lot of making fun of Matt Stafford for a long time, and all of a sudden he shuts everybody up in a hurry.
Yeah. Wait, if you call Stafford a bitch, what's he going to call Jared Goff?
a bridge.
Punk ass bitch. You just add adjectives the worse the player is.
Yeah, exactly. All right, everybody. I want to let folks know that here at the Bar Room, one of the things that we pride ourselves in is that we have a diverse group of people as show hosts and show co-hosts and producers. And we've got people like Mike North, who was the highest paid local sports radio broadcaster in the nation. And we have people like Greg Gabriel, the former director of scouting for the Chicago Bears. We have John Buffone, who, besides being the nephew of the great Doug Buffone, the Chicago Bears player, he has also worked professionally in broadcasting, working for a number of TV stations in the Pennsylvania area. And we have people like Danny Shimon and Neil Stopchinski and other less experienced broadcast voices, but we want to give them a voice here because we think that everybody has a interesting viewpoint. And one of those people that we looked at recently is this gentleman right here. His name is Jordan Silveria. Jordan, did I pronounce your name correctly? I know I misspelled it earlier today.
That's okay, Aldo. Good evening, gentlemen. It's Silvera.
What's up, Jordan?
Aldo, Danny, Neil, it's a joy to kind of hang out and be on and kind of finally you guys get to see who I am and we can talk safeties, ends, whatever. But it was a hell of a night. I'm excited.
Here we go. Let's do the safety talk. Let's go. Let's get the elephant out of the room right now. Come on, let's get it out.
I'm just going to sit back and let this thing happen.
Before we get the elephant out, I want to make an announcement. If people didn't read this on Twitter earlier today, is Jordan is now a member of the Bar Room. He is going to be one of the co-hosts of the Barfly Tailgate Show, which is on every Sunday morning during the season and special shows throughout the off season. And Jordan will also be making appearances on some of our other shows here at the Bar Room. Jordan, welcome to the Bar Room, brother.
Thank you so much, Aldo. It is a joy. I'm super honored and happy to kind of be with like-minded individuals who think deeper about the game and represent the best team in all of America in the Mecca of the Midway.
Did you tell them about the hazing rules that we have here at the Bar Room?
Haze the hell out of me, Daddy. Haze the hell out of me.
Daddy, please.
Right.
One of the interesting things about he's got many interesting stories to tell, and over the course of time, our barflies will learn about them. But one of the things I asked him, how did you become a Chicago Bears fan? Jordan, why don't you share that story with people?
Absolutely. So I became a Chicago Bears fan in one of the most interesting ways. I kind of have always made a joke that I pledged allegiance to futility without even knowing it. I was a young kid, around 7, 8 years old. My father wasn't actually a big football fan, but we had the Bears versus Packers game on. I want to say it was like 98, 99, one of those. It was the only time that the Bears actually beat the Packers in probably about a decade, not kidding, at least within that 5-year period. And I had made a proclamation to my father as a young kid, not knowing what I was talking about, that I would be a fan of the team that won for the rest of my life. And the Chicago Bears beat the Packers that day by 1 point. And it ended up being a situation where maybe if it had swung a little bit different, I would have been able to say that we had, 40 years almost of great quarterback play. But life is the way it is, and I'm happy to be a Bears fan, and I wouldn't change it. I love this franchise and, devote a lot of time and effort and research into it, and just want to see them return to greatness.
Outstanding, and it would have been okay, I guess, to have a root for a team like the Packers who have had great quarterbacks for a long time. But it would It's the Packers.
Kidding, though.
No, yeah, I don't see you with a cheese head, a foam cheese head on top of your head, Jordan.
Absolutely not. It is bear down 24/7, 365.
There you go. All right. So Danny mentioned the initiation. It begins right now. I'm going to step out of the way and let the three of you talk football, debate football, go at it, scrap at it. There's no rules here. You three guys go at it. Three great minds on football. Go.
I mean, Jordan, what was your biggest takeaway from the first round tonight?
That's a great question, Danny, and it's interesting. I mean, I actually think that many of the teams did an excellent job. One of the ones that really shocked me. I mean, there's a few. I'll start by kind of mentioning that the big one that shocked me at the beginning was seeing Jameson Williams being moved up by the Detroit Lions, moving up 20 picks to take Jameson Williams. Didn't seem like a guy that I could see them grabbing. Not that they didn't have wide receiver need, but they kind of grabbed their big, tall X. And not that Jameson's that guy, but he's their perimeter receiver. In DJ Chark with the X receiver. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown as the slot. They have Khalif Raymond as kind of their speed guy, which is why I was like, well, where's Jameson fit? Particularly the reason that was interesting to me is to think that, you talk about the Bears moving up from 20 to 11 last year and having to give up a first-round pick, and I understand that that's in a much better class or perceived class. What I was shocked by, and I tend to kind of be a big fan of Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. I didn't mind the hire by Minnesota, but I was shocked to see that he moved back 20 spots.
Didn't get enough, right?
A third-round pick. Like,
yes.
That's
the same thing, yeah. Exactly, because all you guys a third-round pick because they swapped second-round picks. If he moved up in the second round, that's fine. But, dude, you went 20 spots down. You got to get something more than just that. And I was shocked with that, too, yes.
Yeah, and Neil, before I go real quick, I mean, and I could be wrong if Aldo wants to look up the trade details, but I believe it was moving up 20 spots in the first round. They ended up swapping 12 spots in the second round, and then you get the additional third-round pick.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's the most awful thing, but damn, especially with a division rival, you got to really squeeze that juice for every bit that you can.
Especially when you have it's been multiple teams have said that they only have about 12 to 14 first-round grades on these players, and you're sitting at a prime position there that's right at the end of that line. That was shocking. And then they moved down 20 spots. They got Lewis Cine, the safety, who I like as a player. But again, I thought for them converting to a 3-4 from a 4-3, that might have been a front seven, but I forgot they did sign Zadarius Smith as a free agent. So we'll see how they go there. But that was a little bit of a head scratcher. That's a good call there, Jordan. But for me, that I was just talking with Neil before he jumped on. My biggest head scratcher was Buffalo moving up to 23 for Kaiir Elam. And for me, his tape was very consistent in Florida. I find a hard time of seeing this kid as first round grade. He's got the traits, he's got the size, he's got the athletic ability, but I mean, just too much inconsistencies for me to be able to jump up and get him. I thought for sure they're going to go after Jermaine Johnson when we saw him kind of dropping down the board. Now, I know they signed Von Miller. I keep saying this, but you never have enough pass rushers, man. You never have too many pass rushers. And we saw last time they were on the field defensively, they couldn't stop a nosebleed. So I was a little shocked there. And then the Cowboys passed up Jermaine Johnson. They lost Randy Gregory. Edge rushers was one of their needs as well. And they go get Tyler Smith, who fills in right now that left guard position that was voided by Connor Williams leaving to Miami. And eventually, maybe he's probably going to be groomed to take over Tyron Smith at left tackle. So I see that as a better, feeling a need. Might have reached for the player a little bit in the first round. We'll see how that goes, but definitely a guy that both Neil and I liked. So I'm curious, what's your take on that Kaiir Elam pick from Buffalo?
Absolutely. And Neil, I don't want to kind of cross you out here. If you have anything you want to input, by all
don't
means.
worry. Neil's looking at safeties for tomorrow. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Safeties and punters.
Yeah, safeties and punters. I'll start with the Elam pick, and I thought it was interesting to hear yourself, Danny, and Neil kind of come off the pick a little negative. I don't necessarily think that I disagree with the tape. I thought the tape was somewhat inconsistent. In some ways, I thought his 2020 tape was a little better than his 21 tape. But I saw promise and potential there. I mean, he's athletic. He's a young player. I did an exceptional, speaking about Jameson Williams, I think he did an exceptional job kind of shackling Jameson Williams early on in that game before he got hurt. Now, of course, one of the big knocks on Elam is that he's a bit grabby, which does get called. But, the situation here, and I understand J.C. Horn didn't play a lot last year, but J.C. Horn came into the league drafted high, and he was a very grabby player. And so the big takeaway there with Kaiir Elam to Buffalo for me is that when you look at the Buffalo Bills organization, and you're not going to find me to be a big critic of what Brandon Beane's doing there. He's a guy that's routinely found a way to grow roses from the concrete and squeeze blood from the stone at cornerback. They've had Levi Wallace out there as the CB2 and haven't really been able to replace him. And I understand they had to move up, but when you're looking at that scenario, who's your guy? Are you drafting Roger McCreary? I'm a big Roger McCreary fan, but that's not necessarily the fit that they're looking for. They want a perimeter guy to go opposite Trey White. And you look at Kaiir Elam, and if I have faith in one thing, I believe it's that Leslie Frazier can coach up those DBs to get good production out of Kaiir Elam from what we've seen at the DB level in Buffalo with Trey White, with Levi Wallace as player examples. And then moving on quickly to Tyler Smith, I understand. I agree. I think it was a move up. I think he's raw. I think that you're going to really have to basically rebuild from the ground up his pass pro sets. But with that said, I mean, even in comparison to a guy like Bernard Ryman, you're really betting on the potential there and the traits. And what I can't seem to get away from is the idea that exactly what you're saying, Danny, you're going to put him in at guard because I think that he's a better fit inside for the time being while you're rebuilding him and working on his technique. Putting him ahead of Connor McGovern opposite Zach Martin. A lot of people don't remember, but Zach Martin was a tackle at Notre Dame, and then they moved him inside. You move Tyler Smith inside. He develops, gets his pass pro right. And they have Terrence Steele. I know everybody's like, well, La'el Collins left. Terrence Steele was actually filling in exceptionally well while La'el Collins was out last year. So you have Terrence Steele as your right tackle. You don't need to put Tyler Smith there. Tyler Smith plays your guard. And then if Tyron Smith gets hurt or he does retire, you're hoping to groom Tyler Smith to be that heir apparent to a Tyler Smith to a Tyron Smith. Yeah, a lot of Smiths there at the O-line. But, yeah, that's kind of the way I view those two picks.
Yeah, for me, like, and I don't disagree with your premise there in terms of, they need to replace Levi Wallace, who left, I believe, to Steelers.
Yep.
So they needed a corner there. But like for me, and I think maybe Neil might have it the same way. Like my next best available corner is Andrew Booth from Clemson, and I think he fits perfectly. And I'm sorry.
I would say yes, 100%. I can get that. I think it's an injury concern,
and he fits perfectly in that cover two off coverage. I mean, this kid is physical as hell coming downhill to being able to tackle, wrap up. So yeah, coverage wise, there's some things that you kind of a little bit have to work on, but man, I think he's a perfect fit for that cover two system. So I think that's who I would have gone with. But again, like I said, Brandon Beane has done a hell of a job rebuilding that Buffalo organization. So it's going to be hard to argue with him. I just didn't like Kaiir Elam's tape overall, but no, that was my real first head scratcher, if you will, in that first round. So.
See, it's funny you say that because to me, the big head scratchers that are crazy is the first one would be Kenny Pickett to the Steelers. And this is kind of the same thing with Elam or Smith or any of the players that were picked. If you have a guy and you identify him as your guy, I kind of fall in the lane of who gives a shit where you take him. If that's the guy that you identify, that's the one you should grab. And I don't want to knock Kevin Colbert too much as he's exiting there, if that's the way he wants to kind of send off the Steelers with a new quarterback for the future. But personally, Kenny Pickett's my QB5, and I know that comes as a shocker to a lot of people from all the –
Yeah, please explain yourself.
Yeah, QB5. Absolutely, no problem. I mean, I have a real big issue, and I mean, for example, you're going to call me crazy here again, but Sam Howell is my QB2. And you're like,
you're crazy. You're crazy.
That's fine. So –
Hey, Aldo, we do drug testing still at the bar room or what?
No.
Okay.
So Sam Howell is a guy that in his freshman year produced pretty much the exact same stats that it took Kenny Pickett to get to in his 5 years at Pitt. He's an older prospect. He's taken 4 years to get there. He actually has come out in interviews and said that when he was visiting with the NFL Draft Advisory Board, he decided to go back to school because they called him a 6th or 7th round pick. You send him back with Mark Whipple. He has a Biletnikoff winner at wide receiver in Jordan Addison. He has a good year, and you want to tell me that all of a sudden the 25-year-old that took 5 years to develop with small hands, has to play with gloves, doesn't have killer speed, doesn't have great pocket awareness, and you want to tell me that that's your number one quarterback coming off the board? I distinctly disagree.
2017, there was a kid in North Carolina that had one good year. He couldn't beat Marquise Williams for a starting quarterback position, and then the Bears made him the number 2 overall pick in Mitchell Trubisky after one season at North Carolina. So we've seen those jumps happen. We've seen quarterbacks take Joe Burrow was a 6th round pick before he had that magical year at LSU. So you're telling me Joe Burrow after 1 year you would have taken him number 1? Look at Joe Burrow last year. So I think that kind of contradicts your argument there. And for me, Sam Howell is a 6'1", 218-pound have to feel read quarterback. He's a guy that can't process in the pocket. He's another guy that I don't know if it's a North Carolina thing or what. Whenever shit breaks down around him, he gets a little, the deer in the headlights look, and he loses his shit, and he throws the ball up and puts it in harm's way. So I think he's a guy that is tough. He's physical in terms of a guy that can use his legs and be a runner. But you're talking about Kenny Pickett, who's 6'3". I know he's getting knocked first hands, but he played at Pittsburgh in those conditions throughout his career. He wears those gloves, so that doesn't seem to be a problem. Came from a pro-style offense. He's a guy that makes full field reads. All right, we talk about his experience in terms of starting at Pitt. So I think it was a perfect pickup for the Steelers. I think he will be the starter within the first 3 or 4 weeks. And I think all the Trubisky fans are going to be sitting back there and crying in their terrible towels.
Can we get Uncle Mike on the show?
I don't think he wants to come on.
Well, and we'll see. I mean, ultimately, that's the fun part about this is until you got to give it 2-3 years to see where they're at. But I mean, you talk about Joe Burrow, for example, and to me, Joe Burrow's superpower is his pocket awareness, something that Kenny Pickett distinctly lacks. You're talking about.
I disagree on that one. I think Sam Howell lacks the pocket awareness.
Interesting. Okay. Well, and we differ there. I mean, another example with Kenny Pickett that I'm not a fan of is we talk about, he played in Pittsburgh. He has the small hands. No doubt. I think he can play in the cold weather with the gloves. But let's not act like the fumbles weren't a real issue there. He had what?
No, they were. You're right. They were an issue. Just like Daniel Jones, they're an issue with Daniel Jones as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a situation there. Another, I would say that's probably ranks like second on my board of worst picks for the night. And just kind of briefly glance over the third. I cannot believe that Kenyon Green went ahead of Zion Johnson. I mean, I get it if you're like, maybe you have Zion Johnson and Kenyon Green neck to neck and you're going, well, Zion's a little older, so let's go with Kenyon Green. He's a little more versatile. I get it. That doesn't jive with my
I think that was more scheme related, Jordan, because I think the Cowboys run more of a gap power scheme, and I think Zion is probably best fit in that wide zone stretch scheme that the Chargers are going to probably run out there with.
Texans with Pep Hamilton.
I'm sorry. Kenyon went to. Okay, I'm thinking Cowboys for some reason. They're playing a West Coast, that West Coast offense. So I think that they probably like this versatility and probably might use some more gap power scheme than the Chargers would with Zion Johnson. So I think that's probably the reason why they went there. But I mean, Kenyon Green is a people mover, and I think Zion Johnson. I think Neil and I both agree is a day one starter. I think I love his athletic ability, his versatility as well. But Kenyon Green also gives you some of that versatility just as well. I think he's more of a mauler, people mover, and while Zion Johnson is more of an athletic blocker that can move laterally and maintain his position, maintain his blocks as he's moving at the same time. So I think maybe just scheme fit is maybe where the Texans went there with that.
And that's fair. I think it's a game of flavor. And if Kenyon Green's your guy over Zion Johnson, I can't knock it. Just on a personal flavor level, I would have preferred the technician in a Zion Johnson over that, displacement mauler Kenyon Green. The big one for me, the number one spot that I just can't get with tonight is, and it's not necessarily a knock on Devin Lloyd, but I just don't understand the process behind the pick. So one, they actually had to give up quite a bit to move back. And so they had pick 33. And I understand if you really think Devin Lloyd's not going to make it, if that's your guy, go get him. But you had to trade quite a bit with the Buccaneers to come up to take Devin Lloyd. And the process that I fail to see there is, so you signed Foye Oluokun for a mega deal to be your inside linebacker. You have Miles Jack there. As soon as you signed Foye Oluokun,
Miles Jack is with the Steelers now. I think that's the reason why they took Devin Lloyd.
Oh, I understand. But see, that's the issue is, so you have Miles Jack and you decide, okay, we need to beef up linebacker. So you signed Foye Oluokun to that mega deal. Okay, that's your inside linebacker. Then they decided to release Miles Jack, and he goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Miles Jack is an athletic linebacker, inside linebacker, pretty decent. Again, I don't think he's an all-star. But to then sit there and say, okay, we shipped off Miles Jack and released him. He goes to Pittsburgh. And now we're going to come up and trade a bunch of picks with Tampa Bay to go back and get a similar archetype, a similar style player as Miles Jack with an athletic inside linebacker when you just signed an off-ball inside linebacker and Foye Oluokun to a mega deal. Just their process doesn't add up to me.
Neil, you want to jump in here? I don't want to.
No, I'm good. I'm still kind of processing a little bit the idea around, Kenny Pickett not being ready to go. And really the thing with me is, I don't mean to completely switch topics or anything like that, but hey, that's if I want to talk. That's what I want to talk about, right?
The only thing with the Jacksonville pick and Devin Lloyd is probably they might be looking at Devin Lloyd, he's versatile. He lined up in middle linebacker, but you saw him, this past season, he was a Pac-12, all Pac-12 defensive player of the year, had 20 plus tackles for loss in the backfield, 8 sacks. So he gives you some of that versatility. They might be lining him up as a will linebacker and kick him outside. Sure. And who's that kid that I can't pronounce his name? It's so difficult. That guy they signed from the Falcons.
So
he'll be their middle linebacker. And you do a nice job of pronouncing his name, by the way, Jordan. So I appreciate it. Thank you for saving me there. So he's already a good teammate, Neil. He's already saving me here with these hard names. Hey. So I appreciate it.
How you guys can't pronounce names? Maybe because I've dealt with hard, phonetically pronounced name my entire life. I could easily do that.
So I think maybe going back to topic here. I think what they did was they might put Devin Lloyd at will linebacker. And then use the other kid at middle linebacker. So that just could be maybe process of their thing. Again, obviously, it's just me kind of speculating here. But I mean, I think Devin Lloyd is one heck of a player. I had a first round grade on him, and what he brings off the field in terms of leadership. If you guys remember, there was a piece today. I think it was on NFL Network in terms of what happened last year with that Utah program where they lost 2 players to gunshot accidents, and he really rallied the troops and came back specifically to help them win the Pac-12 championship, and he did. He got them through it. So I think a lot goes in with that kid, and that's one of the reasons why the conversation was a bit steep. I agree with you, Jordan. But I think if you bring in a kid like this, that's a leader. The 2 building stones or building pieces there you have now in defense are Treylon and Walker on the outside, and obviously, Devin Lloyd here there at linebacker. So,
sure, I understand that.
I love defensive players from the University of Utah, though. I mean, just
tough,
the answer to these questions.
Players, man, they're tough players.
Well,
right.
I mean,
if you know anything about Kyle Whittingham, I mean, I've had a chance to break bread with him a little bit. Those dudes are coached up the right way. They're strong. They're tough. They're
he's one of the more underrated. He's one of the more underrated coaches in college football, dude. Kyle Whittingham.
100%. Never gets his just due. Never.
Yeah. And I would say, I mean, we agree on some of the Utah players. And the fact, I mean, a guy that I have is probably one of a sleeper on many people's sleeper boards is Nephi Sewell. I would love to see Nephi Sewell end up in a Chicago Bears uniform as kind of that dime backer, a guy that can play some spot duty for Cruikshank if he were to get hurt, if he were to go out. I think he can be that type of player. So just another example of a Utah linebacker that played right next to Devin Lloyd. He was a good player. But
so speaking of players you like, who are the guys you've highlighted on your board for tomorrow with picks 39 and 48 for the Bears?
Absolutely. So I think that you have to look at Bernhard Raimann. Again, on a personal level, I'm not as high on him for a variety of reasons. I mean, really, it's not that I think age should dictate your grade, but as much as I think he's technical, I think you saw a guy like Tyler Smith go ahead, because I think that teams tend to look at Tyler Smith and say, well, that guy's ceiling is higher than Bernhard Raimann. And so now if we're talking about, okay, he's a technician, he's only been doing it for about a year, 2 years, started playing tackle during COVID, and he does look exceptionally well in that short period of time. But I have a real question of, if you draft him, what is his ceiling and how much tread are you going to get out of him? It's not that he's 28 years old coming in, but he's going to be a 25-year-old rookie. By the time the contract's done, he's almost 30. And if there's even questions about ceiling, about how good can he really be at his peak, I'm not sure that I'm ready to swing on a tackle there. And I know there becomes bigger issues about, I know you guys are not believers in Borum or Tevin at left tackle. I think that's probably a discussion for another day, but I tend to look at tackle and say, okay, Bernhard Raimann at 39, when I could argue you have a bigger need at 3 tech or corner or wide receiver clearly, and taking Bernhard Raimann instead of that, or maybe coming back in the 3rd, 5th, for example, and grabbing like a Max Mitchell if he were there. So that's a player that I would understand people could think of, really the ones that I would hone in on. And I think that it's very clear, as you can see by the mega deal they were ready to hand out to Larry Ogunjobi, that 3 tech is clearly a position that they value. And sure, I think that they reacted swiftly and signed Justin Jones. But I think we're fooling ourselves if we think Justin Jones is all of a sudden an equal player to Ogunjobi. And so there's a real concern there. And I think that Logan Hall is a guy I've really stand for months now, as a rare archetype that really fits Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, Javon Kinlaw. There's really only a few guys that are built that way in the league. So if Logan Hall is there at 39, I'd find yourself hard pressed to move on. And then Roger McCreary, I wouldn't take him over Logan Hall, but we've heard Coach Eberflus talk about how important the nickel position is. And I think Roger McCreary can play the nickel. I'd prefer him at nickel. Again, we're talking about prospects and the idea that where can you maximize their talent and their potential? And so I think Roger McCreary can play outside in a pinch if you need. If somebody goes down, you can put him out there. But as a nickel, I just think he's incredibly scrappy, plays in phase well, rides the hip pocket of receivers, played against the gauntlet of SEC wide receivers from Jamar Chase to John Mechie to Jamison Williams. So I think he's a good fit there. And then, of course, the wide receivers, which every fan wants to talk about. And naturally, I think it falls really nicely where you need a perimeter X receiver, a ball winner. And you have three options there with George Pickens, Christian Watson, and Alec Pierce. I personally fall as Alec Pierce being a guy I prefer over George Pickens, but we're splitting hairs there. And then I would say there is a considerable drop, in my opinion, from Pickens and Pierce to Watson. I think Watson's a little less refined. You're talking again about that older player, has some drop issues. I understand everybody likes a nice Senior Bowl, but you can go back and look at the Notre Dame, I'm thinking about Neil as I'm looking at your face and you're a Notre Dame fan, the North Dakota State film. And I think you see him disappear. Certainly he has highs, but he's had games where he's been blanked and doesn't produce any meaningful stats. And so I think he lacks refinement. And that's a player that I would look at as, sure, if Pierce and Pickens go 35 and 37, then sure, take Watson because that's your last X before we're talking Tolbert, Justin Ross, players of that nature, Tanner Connor later on in the draft. But if you have the ability, and it looks like for some reason wide receivers are not moving quickly, I would kind of key in on Logan Hall if he's there.
Yeah, that makes three of us. Go ahead, Neil.
I was saying I'm the same way. We went in depth on these mocks that we paraded out last night, and both you and I, Dan, we had the same guy going at 39. I feel like once you get past your options on early day two, in terms of guys that you can bring in, play three technique right away, those options are very few and far between. I went in depth, illustrated that a couple weeks ago. I still feel like the Myron Tagovailoa-Mosa is an interesting player that you can find on day three that could play the position. But again, you're talking about projections. Even Thomas Booker is a little bit of a projection, but I do like what he has done at Stanford a hell of a lot more. And he's probably the one guy on day three that if we make it through day two without taking an option at three technique, he's probably the one guy I'm looking at and thinking to myself, if he's there, you got to take him. You need that next guy coming in to, be that fix at that position. But again, we're not talking about a surefire thing. So that's the whole thing. Like the options at three technique in this draft are very few and far between, and at this point they're luxuries. If Logan Hall's there at 39, I don't think there's any way that you can't take that guy. And then you start looking at 48, look at your options left at interior offensive line, offensive tackle, and wide receiver, and that's where you get into the whole Chinese block puzzle where you're starting to look at move things around. What's ranked higher at the positions of need. To me. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess it just depends on who's there. In terms of offensive linemen there are left that I really like that I would take on day two. You talk about Nick Petit-Frere. Abraham Lucas would probably be a third-round guy, but I really like, what he's done at Washington State. He was a guy that I talked a little bit about last year, thinking that he could, potentially have come out. Dylan Parham, the interior guy at Memphis, who I think could be a long-term center, but could also be a short-term fix at the guard position. Ed Ingram is a dude that I talked about the first couple shows that I love his strength, his physicality, his power. Not on the athletic level of some of these other guys, but he's at least functional. Once you get to the second level, he's functional in space. He can move pretty well for his size. And then you start getting into day three with guys like Izudu, Deef, Chris Paul, not the basketball player, and Zach Tom are all guys that, we've all talked about on the show that we have, high grades on, favorable grades on as guys that could fit into what we're doing here in Chicago. So, if Logan Hall's available at 39, I think that's a no-brainer take. Once you get past 39, now that becomes a little bit bigger of a question. Now, say Logan Hall's available at 39, and Andrew Booth also makes it all the way to 39 with our need at corner and our need at three technique. I feel like Andrew Booth, if I look at grades side by side, I keep saying that Thomas Graham, I feel like he could be, the number 2 guy next to Jalen Johnson, right? But I did have a higher grade on Andrew Booth. I love Andrew Booth as a sophomore year in high school. I feel like Andrew Booth can come in and be that guy almost right away. Do you take Logan Hall or do you take Andrew Booth?
And I'll jump in real quick. I tend to agree with that, and I don't know why I skipped over Booth's name. Booth, just for the audience here, is tied for my kind of cornerback 5, and just so you guys get to know me a little bit more, I tend to really place a lot of value on technique and kind of floor. I mean, we can project players all day and night, but we also have to account for what's the lowest that you're getting there. And so I place a lot of value on high floors. And a guy like Booth, to me, when I say cornerback 5, that may sound negative. I don't view it that way. I think he would be
not negative at all.
I think he'd be an excellent outside corner. And I think that there's a real question there of it. Really, the thing to me is, how do you view the injury? And that's one thing nobody knows about Ryan Poles yet, is how does he feel about players with potential injuries? With Ogunjobi, he felt like it was too serious, didn't want to pay him the money. Is a second-round draft pick too much to pay for a guy that you're worried about? Now, it's not that Andrew Booth has any severe injury, but there's just a concern about the sports hernia that he's coming back from, wasn't able to work out. Again, I think he's an incredibly talented corner. For those that don't know, he was the guy that really pushed Darion Kendrick out of Clemson and got him to transfer over to Georgia. I think he'd be an exceptional outside player opposite Jalen Johnson. But it really, funny enough, it kind of goes back to that Jalen Johnson pick from Ryan Pace, which was a question at the time of, do we take this guy that's got this shoulder issue that's kind of got a history with it? And is it worth the chance? And obviously they rolled the dice and it's been pretty solid. So it's really, if you're taking corner there, I think it comes down to do you want that smaller figure that can play nickel and maybe bump out to perimeter on some plays with McCreary, or do you want that perimeter outside guy opposite Jalen that you're basically playing press bail and manning up people? In addition to the cover 2, 2 high defense that he runs with Flus, but what's your flavor? What's your preference?
For me, it's Logan Hall. That's the guy I'm targeting right now, and all 3 of us agree on that. This kid will be a phenomenal fit inside that 3 technique. He's a guy that gets pigeonholed as an outside guy, a base 4-3 end or a 5 technique in a 3-4. But I saw his tape. I saw his initial quickness. I saw his ability to be able to use his hands. We saw that 1.68 10-yard split at the combine. So I think this guy's got that burst, that ability to get into the backfield. So I think that's my primary guy. I like Andrew Booth a lot. I know he's coming off the injury, but I'm sorry, if I'm sitting there looking at Andrew Booth or possibly an offensive lineman like Nicholas Petit-Frere, I'm going Nicholas Petit-Frere. Unless you tell me, hey, the Bears are going to sign Dwayne Brown after the draft. All right, we can wait another year, maybe get a developmental prospect in the 3rd round. You go and get your kid. You get yourself a Andrew Booth, a guy that can possibly start for you, possibly next year. So we'll see. My thing is not. My worry is if Logan Hall is not there, right? We know I think we all like Travis Jones, but I think he's more of a 1 technique instead of a 3 technique. So we're still looking to fill that 3 technique. Now, maybe not at pick 39 or 48 for that matter, but if you're able to trade down and get more picks, maybe even in the 3rd round, a DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M is a kid that really intrigues me. He's another guy that's got that burst, that off the snap, gets into the backfield. Misused a little bit at Texas A&M. He was used as kind of like a Treylon Walker, right? He was a guy that was put inside the 3-man front, closer to the guard, not really allowed to kind of explode. I think he was misused there. I think he's more of a inside, the 3 technique at the next level. I think that first step quickness, his ability to penetrate, get into the backfield, I think could be a possibility. Again, he had, I think, 12.5 tackles for loss last year, 8.5 sacks, led the Texas A&M defense that way. But I just think him is a guy that maybe if you kind of trade down and move down a little bit, could be a guy you target late 2nd, maybe or your 3rd round. So what do you guys think about DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M?
Yeah, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. He's another one of those guys that, I've really been looking at him from a scouting standpoint since, his early days in high school. Has been athletic for life, has a length. Again, playing out of position, you don't get, the perfect evaluation of a kid in a 3 technique, type of role, a little bit of a projection, but, again, in terms of like unteachable things, he's got the traits that fit what you're looking for at that particular position. I like that potential pick, mid round 2, round 3. there really is nobody else on day 2 that I would feel comfortable taking. The Perrion Winfrey kid, I'm always on the fence on. Had a great Senior Bowl, doesn't have, exceptional film, but has a size, has a length, has all the things. And there's a lot of question marks there. Once you get past all those guys, you're looking at day 3 dudes. And as I've said before, numerous times, the pick of the litter is very slim in terms of guys that you think can actually come in and play and be successful at those type of positions. At that point, I think I'm probably looking at, offensive linemen. If we don't get Logan Hall and we're questionable into Marvin Leal, I think you're starting to look more at offensive linemen to fill the void there. And with 1, 2, 3, there's like 8, 9 guys still left on the board that are day 2 picks, potential day 2 picks, and then early day 3 picks that fit. And at that point, I think you're starting to look at the defensive line position as something that you fix in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be brief here. I think that we're spot on, and we all agree that Logan Hall really fits that archetype at 3 tech that maybe Flus is looking for. Reminds him of Buckner. I'm not necessarily low on Leal or Winfrey. I personally find myself slotting Travis Jones as kind of that second choice right behind Logan Hall, and I understand he comes from UConn as more of a 1 tech, but maybe you guys can educate me. I don't think that there's some rule book in football history that says a 3 tech needs to weigh a certain amount. And so I really think if you kind of look at Travis Jones and you have coach get him on the phone and say, bring those track shoes, let's get you to lose a few pounds. I think he plays at around 320. I don't know if he comes in at 310 and that's your 3 tech. Sure. Would you like him a little more slender, a little more slim? Absolutely. But I look at a guy that if he carries a little extra weight, and the worst part is he gets a double team and picks up a double team so that Roquan can kind of roam free and make a play and kind of, spill and fill. I don't find that to be a huge issue with Travis Jones. And then where I just have Leal and Winfrey a little lower is just consistency on tape. Again, It's funny. We talk about Winfrey and we talk about Leal being used out of place. I actually think Winfrey kind of got the same raw deal. Oklahoma stints their fronts a lot. Which, for those unaware, you're moving the D-line about a second before the snap. And so it's really hard to make a real impactful play when you don't know if you're going to get washed down, if you're going to be pinned and pulled. So I don't think Winfrey got the exact best opportunity. But even him, I think that they both remind me of the same player, which is that when they're on, they're as explosive as you'll find. It's just a matter of how consistently can you extract that explosion, that athleticism to be your 3 tech. And I would put Leal just a step ahead of Winfrey, because when I look at Leal, I don't think you could craft a 3 tech body better than his. It's like, as I just kind of mentioned, there's no rule book on what a 3 tech looks like. But if there was, I would imagine Leal would be the definition of it. A guy that's 6'3", 290, 300 pounds, is a freakish athlete that's athletic, but just about really getting maximized value out of him and making sure that he's not loafing, not disappearing in games. And the question still exists of how much is that because the system didn't play to his strengths versus how much is that him? And, Leal was considered a top 10 pick at the very beginning of this process. So it's a somewhat of a precipitous fall, but there's questions about why he fell. So again, I put Travis Jones just a notch ahead.
Yeah, with Travis Jones, for me, I like the kid, but for me, in terms of why I see him as a 1 tech instead of a 3 tech, it's nothing to do with his weight. It's more just he doesn't have the twitch that a guy like Logan Hall or even Leal has. He's a guy that's more of a power rusher, a guy that could basically bully you back into the backfield. But the 3 technique specifically, you got to be able to get off that football, penetrate that gap, and get back and make some plays on the quarterback or make plays in the backfield. So that's why I think Hall, Leal, they fit that profile, better, in terms of that position. But, you bring a Travis Jones in as a kid that can play 1 technique and he could bully ball and just rattle, guys' cages there in the middle of the field. Hey, that works out as well, but you're still going to need someone that's going to be able to get off that football real quick and be able to penetrate and cause some havoc into the backfield. So that's why the other 2 guys I like specifically at 3 technique. So, I think I forgot who made a comment in the chat saying that too many talented players to pick Logan Hall. Obviously, you haven't seen this kid play. Maybe because he played at Houston. Phenomenal. Yeah, you haven't played. Maybe he can play at Houston. Maybe you're looking at stats or whatnot. But this kid, if you watch his tape, he's creating havoc. I mean, you got to chip him, you got to double team him, you got to get people there to watch him, and again, used in a system that I think would kind of fit his strengths. this system right here, I think he could be a heck of a player here for the Bears in the future. So, just do me guys a favor. You just watch some Logan Hall. Even if you go up on YouTube and put out some highlights, again, the way he takes on, blockers, the way he is able to, spin move for a guy that big, that, that size, he's got that in his arsenal as well. So, the guy's got, use of hands and all that stuff. You see the swim, you see the swipe, you see the rip, you see all the things you want to see for a guy that's developed, a pass rush technique, and has got an idea on how to rush a passer as well. So, Winfrey, you guys touched on, I think that guy was a beast at the Senior Bowl. And I think, before the Senior Bowl, I had low hopes for Treylon Winfrey. I wasn't really that high on him. He's a guy that doesn't have much flexibility. He's got a really stiff lower half for me. He's a north-south rusher. The guy's got tremendous power. I mean, he was another guy that was just bullying guys at the Senior Bowl. Ended up moving that into the game, was the Senior Bowl MVP. But I just I don't see the twitch in him that I like to see in guys like Logan Hall and Leal. So curious to see how that ends up there. But yeah, any other position that you guys want to think the Bears might have to address maybe later on? Anything in this draft so far, after it's only 32 picks, but anything trending in a way where you think it could be favorable for the Bears, whether it's tomorrow or Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I'll open that up real quick and say, to me, I don't want to dismiss that offensive line's a need. I really believe in that. But personally, and you hear so many people say that this draft is deep, it is. But to me, if you're talking about a position group that I love the depth, it's interior offensive linemen. The reality is there's a lot of in vogue positions, receiver, quarterback's going to have a run. You may see a few running backs kind of be taken at the bottom of day 2. And so you find yourself in a situation where you have a Josh Azudu, you have a Cade Mays, you may have a Luke Gadecki, you have a Zach Tom, you have a Zachary Thomas from San Diego State. You have these guys in the interior offensive line, Brock Hoffman, Michael Maietti. I can go down the list. And so when I think about what's a position you can maybe wait on, you have a lot of fans saying, well, don't take the 3-tech. The reality is, and this is probably a discussion we can have a different day, but the 3-tech is a position that in many ways is dying because of the 2-high system and these 3-4 defenses. And so if you can get a real player that fits the 3-tech role, I understand there may be concerns about receivers and offensive linemen, but you can get guards and a lot of players in this class that played tackle in college that project into guard, and you can get that guard tackle versatility later on in the draft.
Neil, any thoughts about what they could be looking at in terms of groups that are kind of position groups that are kind of trending the Bears' way, maybe day 2, maybe day 3?
Well, again, I feel like I've answered this question several times, but we're still in a position where we need to tackle 3 technique. We got to tackle offensive line. Ideally, if you can get a left tackle, that'd be great. Cornerback, there's 5 left on the board that I really like that are potential day 2 guys. How best are you able to move the blocks around and make this work? I still think that there's still potential. I was talking about this with one of my reporter friends earlier tonight, that either pick 39 or 48, kind of like how I did in my mock yesterday. That's a prime position for a trade to happen, to where we can move back and bring in a few more picks. The way I did it yesterday was I moved back 48 and I got 3 more for that between there and pick 115. So I have 5 picks in the top 115 in the draft. And at that point, you're able to tackle every single need that you have and still have some room to play with towards the back end of the draft. There's definitely room for that to happen. I don't know if I'm sure Poles is thinking that. I'm not saying that he's not thinking about that potential possibility for that type of scenario. But the thing about it is the way Poles described how he is preparing for this draft. I'm sure he has numerous options, numerous main options. He has numerous contingency plans. He has numerous plan C's, D's, and E's, and Z's, and he's going to be prepared for whatever wrench gets thrown into the plan that he has coming up. Very confident in his attention to detail going into this draft, the way that he has prepared, the way he has gotten that room full of scouts prepared. And again, I talked about this on previous shows this year and last year. That room full of scouts, I know a lot of those guys, they do a phenomenal job in terms of the initial evaluation, the information gathering, the character assessments, right? Talking to the right people while on campus and off campus, right? Making the phone calls, getting all the information that you need to make the right, judgments in terms of the evaluation, both on and off the field. He's got those guys prepared for whatever he needs to make sure that he executes on draft day. Looking at this draft I did yesterday, what did I do? I took, round 2, pick 48, exchanged up 64, 96, and 115. So two more day 2 guys and an early day 3 guy. And that way I was able to, address wide receiver, offensive line. Obviously Cole Strange is off the board. But again, you look at who's left. There are some guys that you could argue are day 2 guys that could fit somewhere between 71 and the end of round 3 that would make a lot of sense. And then, I took Zion McCollum, and, at that point where I took Zion McCollum, it was between him and Alontae Taylor, 2 guys I really liked. I think Kobe Bryant was still on the board as well. All 3 of those guys fit. I think I like Alontae Taylor's physicality more so than, the combination of McCollum and Kobe Bryant. But regardless, those are all 3 guys that fit with what the Bears are trying to do. So, and then, to round that out with pick 115, I took Danny Gray as just a weapon. He's a guy that has absurd speed. You can use him on offense, and, he then goes and becomes an absolute dangerous weapon in the return game as well. So, to be honest with you, I wasn't a big fan of trading anything at the very beginning of this show. He has, why not who? He's fast, has great hands, high points every catch. Who are we why notting? I didn't see the beginning
I think
part
somebody
of that.
said they don't want Alec Pierce.
Who doesn't want Alec Pierce?
Yeah, I know. It's
why
wild.
don't you want Alec Pierce?
It's wild.
You
don't want a perimeter X that literally scares off.
Did you watch the Notre Dame game?
And the Notre Dame
I watch the Notre Dame game, I get PTSD over here. Jesus Christ. So, think about this, guys. I mean, there are so many ways this could go tomorrow. We have laid out the options that we need to address ad nauseum. I feel like that the best case scenario is you go ahead and take 39 or 48, trade back, get some draft capital, or things fall perfectly in line that allows you to get that 3 technique, allows you to get that interior offensive lineman, get the wide receiver, and then also you could probably address corner, on day 3 if everything lines up perfectly. The planetary alignment thing, I'm not expecting that because nothing ever goes perfectly. I spent half an hour trying to figure out my goddamn audio tonight. So let's see what happens tomorrow. I'm team get picks. I am team trade back, get picks. Accumulate draft capital. Let's rock and roll.
Yep. Aldo, if I could jump in for just 1 second. I mean,
Please.
Just something I'd like to kind of pitch to you guys and the audience, and we don't even have to explore it, but a situation that I've really kind of honed in on is something I'd love to see happen is, again, we're trying to align stars here, but I'd love to see Tennessee take Desmond Ridder, a guy that I kind of find is a perfect comp for Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill's eating a ton of their cap, and I feel like they've kind of ran out of real estate as to where to go with that team, which is why you're seeing them trade away a guy like A.J. Brown, because you can't afford to pay for him, and a lot of that is because Tannehill's charging a lot to the cap, and he's a 34-year-old guy, kind of sneakily old, so I'd like to see them take – you need one team to kind of take that quarterback, whether it be Willis or Ridder, and I think Tennessee would be a good option there. And the reason for that is – yep. And then you're going to see teams all of a sudden going, well, shit, we got to move up. And I certainly don't think that you're going to find Corral, Willis, and Ridder go, somewhere between 33 and 39. So when you get to 39, if you think you can, con either the Colts or the Falcons to move up with you, or even the Lions still need a quarterback. If you can find a way to get them to come up and say, look, we want Malik Willis, great. If you find the value there and you can pick up some picks, I think that's the move. Assuming Logan Hall or somebody else isn't there.
Yeah, that's something I touched on earlier, Jordan. Before you got on, was with the Bears at the 7th or 39th overall pick, and you have the Seahawks that are primed for a quarterback. If Tennessee bypasses the quarterback with the third pick in the second round, now you have teams like maybe Atlanta. Malik Willis was as a kid that grew up in Atlanta. He went to Falcons games as a kid, so maybe they might want to bring that hometown kid back home. They're gonna probably look to jump up ahead of the Seahawks, and now you have the Bears in a prime position to go ahead and get some picks there from it. So that's one team as well Atlanta, maybe the Lions, for a kid like Malik Willis. So yeah, I think that'd be a great shot for the Bears if one of these quarterbacks goes, or maybe they're all there sitting still, and a team says, what, I'm gonna go get this quarterback that I bypassed in the first round, but I'm willing to take a second round flyer on him. That could be a chance for the Bears to eat there in terms of picking up some draft capital.
It's the exact situation that happened with Tevin Jenkins last year. Pace decided, all right, let's go up and get our tackle. And then it started with Dylan Radins and Sam Cosme and Liam Eichenberg. They just all started flying off the board because Tevin Jenkins won.
Still feeling the sting of that one, too. I'm still bitter about what we did on day 2 last year. I'm very bitter about that, man.
Ryan Pace. Let's mortgage the future constantly. Let's pay for it.
I was sitting with my girlfriend at we were doing dinner at what the hell is that damn there's a really sick spot on Division Street on Division and Damon.
Mickey D's?
Mickey D's?
Mickey D's?
No, not Mickey D's. I'm not cheap.
All right, fine. Culver's.
Fatport. We're at Fatport. Over on Division and Damon, watching the draft, grabbing some food, drinking some beers, and that notification came through that Ryan Pace traded away one of our day 2 picks, and that still sticks in my jaw. We were having a great night. I was getting ready to celebrate, a couple good picks. I can't remember what I texted you, Danny, but I'm pretty sure it was something just completely obscene.
We could go another 2 hours just going off these branches, because can you remember a good draft day deal, like more than 2 or 3 draft day deals that Ryan Pace made? I can't.
No. You traded up. You traded
up to get Justin Fields.
More than 2 or 3. That's why I kind of posed the question that way.
God, this is the guy that literally picked up David Montgomery and said he fell to us, and they traded up to get him.
Yep.
Right. That and Trubisky would have been available at number 3. He was awful.
Hey, guess who works in the? We were talking about the Atlanta Falcons maybe jumping up and to get Willis with the Bears. Guess who works in the Atlanta front office now?
Mr. Ryan Pace.
That's your boy.
As far as I'm concerned, he's the GM with how many Bears players are signing, not Terry Fontenot.
How about that, right? Terry's like, watching porn in his office, and he calls Ryan, hey, I need a few more signings. Take care of this for me. All right. So let us answer a few questions, and then we'll wrap things up. First question, just go around the table real quickly. Nomad wants to know, am I the only one who thinks linebackers are a dime a dozen in the NFL? I know we've sort of talked about this a little bit, but why don't you guys just jump in and address Nomad's question?
I don't think they're a dime a dozen. Special linebackers are hard to come by, and then when you got a couple of those guys, your defense really takes just look at when the Bears, when Roquan was out of the lineup, or when Trevathan, when he was healthy, when he was he still had his speed, when he was out of the lineup, and he put guys like Kwiatkowski and someone else in there, you notice the lack of speed, the lack of athletic ability back at that second level of defense. All of a sudden these linebackers were taking bad angles because they didn't have the speed to get to the ball carrier. Now you're gushing the Bears in terms of the run game and in terms of coverage. Spinning around, getting turned around in coverage, losing the tight ends down the seam. So. Great linebackers are very, very vital. Anybody in the front 7 for me is very vital. So, with the game changing a little bit, before it used to be 3 linebackers. Now you can probably live with just 2 linebackers. You can get a third guy just being a guy. You can go with his strengths, whether he's a run defender or he's a good in pass coverage. But for me, if you have a good defense, you have at least 2 good linebackers.
Paul said that, that they were going to play the dime defense probably 70-80% of the time. And maybe it was Eberflus who said it.
Eberflus, yeah. He said, yep.
Yeah. You guys remember when we had Urlacher, Briggs, and Roosevelt Colvin?
Oh, yeah. I remember those days.
How dynamic our defense was. Now, Grant, we also had Mike Brown in the secondary, and we had some dudes up front. But our second level was the most stout I've ever been in my entire life.
Yeah. Indeed.
I miss those days.
See, and I will kind of jump in there, and I'll fight back a little bit, but not so much that I fundamentally disagree with you, Danny, just in the sense that I think great players at any position matter. And so I value linebacker like no other. I mean, to me, a lot of people would cringe at this, but I would die to see Troy Anderson in Chicago. I mean, maybe it's just romanticism, but I look at a Troy Anderson athletically, not production, but athletically, and I can't help but see him as the Brian Urlacher and Roquan Smith being the Lance Briggs in this modern, trying to recreate Lovey and Monty Kiffin's defense here. So, I mean, I see that, but the reason I fight back on it a little bit is, not on a personal level on how I feel, but when we look at the league now, as you're mentioning, with shifting away and only having 2 linebackers, you're finding a lot of teams devaluing the position. And in many ways, I'm surprised at, the fact that Lloyd went today and Quay Walker, but you have a scenario where you're finding Warner in the 3rd round from BYU, and you're finding Wagner in the 2nd round from Utah State, and you're finding these guys that are coming later in the draft. And it's not even so much based on, I guess you would say, filling the run, being downhill strikers. You're really finding guys that are heady, that can play, rat in the hole, playing the crossers, playing robber, carrying seam routes, things of that nature. So it goes back to, hey, we don't even necessarily need this big, strong Mike. Let's get a heady player that can move sideline to sideline. Roquan Smith, Bobby Wagner, Warner from San Francisco. So, that's what I see there.
You're talking about leadership positions too, right?
Yep.
We're talking essentially quarterback of the defense, right? I mean, I feel like if you're going to value quarterback on offense as much as you do, you have to put some value on the quarterback of the defense, essentially. The guys that are the first line of defense, once the ball gets past the defensive line. Dime a dozen, I really don't think so. I spent 18 years trying to help Mississippi State, trying to find a linebacker that was worth the shit. It was hard. It was really hard. But I mean, we also ran like a little 3-4 with rush ends and everything else. Kind of very similar to what we did here in Chicago before this new administration came in. It's hard to find dudes that are fully functional at the 2nd level. It really is.
I'll just wrap this question up. For me personally, the better you are, the closer you are to a line of scrimmage as a defender, the better your defense is going to be as a whole. So the front 7, which is the line and the linebackers, the better those guys are, the better you are going to be as a defense as a whole.
And just quickly, I want to try to wrap things up here, but we could talk about this just one subject for 2 hours. But I do think that because the game is changing so dramatically with the pass game, that we have to at least have the discussion, a really good discussion about whether the game is really now won at the line of scrimmage, because the ball is coming out so quickly that it's almost physiological or whatever the word is, impossible to get a sustained pass rush because the quarterback is in the shotgun position. He takes a couple of steps back. The receivers are so fast. They're already 30 yards downfield when they release the ball. It's almost impossible if you don't have a great center and 2 great guards to stop that inside rush, because that's the quickest path to the quarterback is a straight line. So I just feel like we should have a real good discussion in an upcoming show where we discuss the new dynamics that are happening in the game of pro football.
And this is something I'll go back to all the time, Aldo, and I can have this conversation with you or anybody else whenever you want. But the Rams won the Super Bowl last year because they had a great secondary.
Right, but it's still evolving. I'm not saying that things just go off like that. I'm talking about foreseeing what is going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That this game is going to continue to evolve from a ground game to a mixed game, ground and pass, to a fast passing game. It's arena football that's coming to the National Football League.
But even so, you still need, and I understand your logic in terms of the quick hitting game, the quick passing game, but if your front 7 up front is not quick and not athletic enough, that's why, we just thought 2 linebackers going to first round. These are both quick, athletic guys that, if there's a quick slip screen in the flat, these guys can get out there and track it and make tackles.
I think we all love Logan Hall, right? because he can get there quickly in the middle in that three.
Yeah, Logan Hall. Yeah, he's more penetrating in the middle. But we're talking about linebackers, Quay Walker for Green Bay, and then Devin Lloyd. These guys can get sideline and sideline and make plays in the flat. So that's the second level of defense to kind of offset some of those quick hitters and all that stuff. So, you can go back and forth, but for me, it's like I said, and you guys can chime in here too. But for me, it just always, if your offensive line, defensive line is good, you can have a good team generally.
Well, I think it was Jordan that said, all 11 players have like equal value, right? You need everybody to function at a high level. And
it's flavor. If you want to ask Tom Coughlin what he prefers, he'll tell you the D-line matters the most. If you want to ask Bill Belichick what matters the most, he's going to tell you the DBs matter the most. So it really is about flavors. And I mean, I'll be very quick because I know you want to move on, Aldo, and wrap this up. I would just say this is an incredibly nuanced discussion, and I'd be more than willing to have it. This really ties into the discussion that we were having on Draft on Tap yesterday when I was in the comments talking about safety versus edge and what matters more and the role of linebackers in today's game and how you're playing defense. It's a very dense, nuanced topic that requires a lot of unpacking. That obviously I don't think is the right time to do it tonight after a long day, but whenever you guys would like to have the conversation, I'd love to kind of come in and talk about it because I think I can get some insight on it.
That'd be great. What do you guys think? Excuse me, my voice just went away. Would you take Christian Watson at 39?
I wouldn't. And I know I'm crazy. I am not as high on Christian Watson as many people. And again, it's that question requires on who else is there. And is a Logan Hall there? Do you value corner more? I think that, sure, if Pierce goes and Pickens goes, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Jalen Tolbert is the same threat that Christian Watson is. And I'm not going to tell you that Khalil Shakir is. So if you're really looking for that X-perimeter, a guy to stretch the field, to be a ball winner, things of that sort, to play the slants, the curls, the go routes on the backside, the digs, then yeah, I think that you take Christian Watson at 39 if you don't think that there's another guy that fills that role, and the other two being predominantly Pierce and Pickens are gone.
Any objections to
that? For me, it's if, like I said, like Jordan said, who's there? If Logan Hall or an offensive lineman is there, that supersedes that need for me, because you got to protect the quarterback, you got to get after the quarterback. Something that I always believed in, and I always will believe in. So if you're asking me if it's between Logan Hall and Christian Watson, I say no. This draft class is enough where you can get guys in the third round, even in the fourth round. If you get a fourth round pick too, you can get guys to come in and contribute right away. So for me, it's always offensive, defensive line before a skill position.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's relative, right? Everything we're talking about right now, like scenario-wise, is relative. If it's Watson versus Hall, I'm taking Hall. If it's Watson versus Zion McCollum, I'm taking Watson. If it's Watson versus Petit Frere, I'm taking Petit Frere. I'm going to value left tackle and three technique before I value the wide receiver position. Not that that's not incredibly valuable right now, but I feel like just looking at the number of marks I have on my page underneath the wide receiver column on my makeshift board that I crafted up, an hour and a half ago. There's a lot more receivers that can come in and make an immediate difference. There aren't a whole lot of left tackles, interior offensive linemen, and three techniques that can come in and make an immediate difference. So I'm going to value those because of the scarcity of guys that fit on an immediate basis. Right. Once you get further, you could take some interior offensive linemen, like I was saying before, that kind of fit what we do and will eventually probably become starters. Now, the interesting conversation becomes, okay, what if Logan Hall is gone, Petit Frere is gone, Andrew Booth is there, Christian Watson's there, Alec Pierce is there, and let's say those three guys are there. That becomes an interesting conversation now.
Absolutely.
Gotta be honest with you, if Andrew Booth is there and Hall is gone and Petit Frere is gone, but we still have his receivers, to me, Andrew Booth is the highest on my board. I'm going to take Andrew Booth at 39.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I try to remove bias here as much as I can. I really like Alec Pierce's game, like significantly. I think he really fits what you're trying to get out of this offense. A perimeter guy in that 3-by-1 on the backside, on the line, asking a guy to win when you are planning on having Justin Fields throwing deep. And if there's one thing we know about Alec Pierce, I mean, you guys have seen the tape. You saw it against Notre Dame. You said yourself, Neil, and I go back to that Alabama game, and just because Desmond Ridder wasn't able to get him the ball because their offensive line collapsed on Desmond Ridder, I've never seen, and we're talking about Saban DBs here, backing off with their tail between their legs, 7 to 10 yards off, scared that he was going to blow by them and willing to concede 8-yard curls, quick outs, things of that sort, instead of saying, please don't burn me for 40 yards. And I think that's an incredible asset if you can get that.
Well, that being said, too, I don't think that Josh Joby and Armour Davis, is that the other guy?
Yes.
Jalen Armour. I don't. Those two guys are such of a lower class of corner that Alabama has had versus who they've had before. You know, Surtain last year, Marlon Humphrey the couple years prior. Those guys were on a level, right? Josh Joby and Jalen Armour Davis, Jingleheimer, whatever the hell his name is, it doesn't matter because I don't like him. I don't think those guys are even remotely close to NFL caliber DBs, and so maybe that's the reason why. I feel like if you had Patrick Surtain on Alec Pierce, you would have seen a completely different style of defense.
Sure.
But that being said, at the same time, you know, you just got to look at what the video, you know, shows you. You know, like you can't go and like make up video, right? You can't just go ahead and like craft some stuff together and, you know, poof, we have video. And you know what he shows on video is, I mean, it's unique.
It's freakish.
You know, it's unique, and you know, again, there's three guys right now. I mean, I really want to give Pickens the benefit of the doubt. I really do, but I don't like character issues, right? And you know, there's just too much floating around out there. So he's kind of off to the side right now on my board, but I still have him on there. I still have a little mark by him as a day two guy that you have to think about. But to me, those day two guys that really are right now, you know, primo guys right for the picking for what the Bears need, what the Bears do, what me personally I envision as a guy coming in. And I've said from day one, I want a guy with size. I want a guy who can go up and make a play. I want a guy that's got some speed, that can stretch the defense, take the top off maybe, and that's Watson, Pierce, and Tolbert. And you know, right now that's what's left. And so, you know, it's just going to be interesting tomorrow as the chips fall. If all the guys that we are talking about tonight are still available, that's going to make it tough. Talking about Hall, Petit Frere, Watson, Pierce, Tolbert, Booth, even Kyler Gordon. We even talked about Kyler Gordon. Kyler Gordon's a guy I really like. You know, so it's like if you have those like, you know, 5, 6, however many guys I just rattled off left on the board at pick 39, Ryan Poles is going to, you know, have an interesting decision to make. I'm really going to be, you know, interested to see what he does in terms of dropping a sack and making a call on something.
I mean, and that's the thing that I've been really trying to kind of stress to Bears fans that were freaking out in the middle of the day about, oh my God, it's Wilson and it's Williams and it's Olave going back to back. And really, if you're taking a post-op look at the day one of the draft, it's really hard to wish for a better situation. I mean, sure, I'd love to see Tyler Linderbaum there, or sure, Olave falls, something of that sort. But when you consider who's available and who's left, it's hard to argue that the Bears are not in a great position. You could possibly trade back if the quarterback's going to run. Even if you have a play, like, you know, a situation that we look at with the Minnesota Vikings, people thought they'd be taking Stingley if he was there at 12. They decided to move back at their safety. You could argue they still need a corner. Great. So even if they take Kyler Gordon, fine. You move back to Booth. You move back to McCreary. Okay, well, fine. They take him. It's a situation where the New York Giants, for example, if they want to move Bradbury, they're going to need a corner. They could take one. You still have options, and we're just talking corners there, not even considering Logan Hall, potentially a Petit Frere, Ryman, Pickens, Pierce. I mean, it's really hard for me to imagine that the Bears don't walk away with quality players tomorrow.
The one thing, guys, we haven't talked about, and this is a guy that's kind of sitting on my board just flashing with the neon lights, David Ojabo. If he's still out there, I know he's coming off the Achilles, but he's an edge guy, and we haven't marked edge as a need here going into the draft. But you know, Robert Quinn is getting up there in age. You know, maybe there's rumors about Robert Quinn, you know, trading him, not trading him. You know, do you take a flyer on David Ojabo, or do you just say, you know what, I can't risk it? But I mean, I think the talent is just too enticing to pass up. curious what you guys think about Ojabo sitting out there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in real quick and just say that I think Ojabo is an interesting talent, like you're saying. It's really tantalizing. Again, it's a question on how does Ryan Poles feel about injuries? Does he consider, hey, I'm willing to take a guy in the second round with a full year of medical redshirt? I mean, I look at a guy like out of Vanderbilt, Deo Odeyingbo, who went to the Colts last year, who tore his Achilles before Ojabo did. And he was able to come back kind of halfway at the bye week. But you're talking about Ojabo that tore it significantly later. I think it's really a safe bet to say he's not playing this year. So are you okay taking a medical redshirt with a second-round pick? Are you at a roster in a position where you can afford to have that luxury?
Yeah, that's the talent itself is first round talent. It's just a matter of, like I said, do you take a guy who's going to have a redshirt his first year? So we'll see how that goes. But even Boye Mafe, the kid from Minnesota, as an edge prospect, is a guy that's really tantalizing. And I just said earlier, you cannot have too many pass rushers. So, and then this is a defensive front four that's predicated on pass rush. So, I don't know. It's going to be curious to see. Tomorrow's going to be exciting for sure when the Bears are on the board. A, are they going to trade? B, are they going to pick? Yeah, they're going to piss us off with whoever they pick. We'll see how that goes. But it's going to be exciting tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was exciting today. I mean, I really do believe that this was one of the best opening rounds because it was so unpredictable. And then you see all the trades that were happening. I mean, the only thing that would have made it better is if the Bears would have had the first pick, the 10th pick, the 20th pick, and the 30th pick. I mean, I thought it was very, very entertaining. Good stuff today.
It was funny because I was at my daughter's. She had a play today, and I was at that. And when the beginning of the draft started, and I got a text from Aldo, and it says, "Hey, how about Arkish throw something out there? Maybe the Bears might trade Roquan Smith and jump into the first round." I'm like, of course. The day that I'm watching the draft, I haven't missed the first round of the draft in I don't remember how long, but it's my daughter's. My daughter was performing in this play. I'm like, I'm not gonna miss my daughter's play. I'm like, of course, that one time they make a huge trade and they're gonna be available, but luckily nothing happened. So.
See, Jordan, that's the type of terrible boss that I am. That Danny tells me, the day of the draft, I'm taking my daughter. I'm really looking forward to it. This is going to be awesome and so forth. And I'm like, I'm really proud of you. That's a great decision. Let's not do a live show. You go spend time with your daughter, have a great time. And then I forget about it. I send them a text.
Start sweating. Of course, they got to make the trade now.
I'm terrible. That is it. But Jordan, you are outstanding. For those of you who have just got a taste of what Jordan is going to be delivering on the Barfly Tailgate Show, I think you'll feel like the rest of us that he's very, very impressive with his thought and how he delivers it. Jordan, good luck to you on the Barfly Tailgate Show. And if you want to shout out anybody, your special somebody in your life, please feel free.
No, I mean, really, I just want to say thank you so much, Aldo. As I kind of told you personally, I appreciate you giving a shot to the small minnow in a large ocean of Bears Twitter and Bears fans that kind of joined the chat. And I appreciate you taking a chance. And I'm looking forward to collaborating with the whole team at Barroom, whether it be Danny, Neil, Aaron, obviously on Sundays in the Barfight Tailgate. Just an exciting opportunity that I'm appreciative for. So thank you.
Thank you. And that hazing hasn't even started yet, Jordan.
Right.
Danny is the president of the part of the organization.
Well, I gotta be a president. Why can't I be vice president? No, this is all joking aside. This is a pleasure. Like I said, you're one of our regulars, and you always are. Going back and forth with us via the chat, and we appreciate now finally meeting you and then and welcoming you on to the team. So I think it's going to be a great addition for the bar room.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it.
Take care, Jordan. I think Neil is having his battles with electronics right now, so hopefully we can get him in before we say goodbye. But Danny, I wanted to, just talk to you for another couple of minutes. I know we've kept you up way past your bedtime, but overall, can Ryan Poles do something tomorrow that would give you doubts about his leadership capabilities?
Well, I'm sure. I mean, you can always pick players that I don't have rated high on my board. I mean, they can always do something like that, or make some crazy ass trade. But I think from all that I've heard from Ryan Poles so far, and he's got that strikes me again. The proof is going to be in the pudding, right? And actions speak louder than words. But he strikes me as a guy that is going to kind of follow the philosophy that I believe in, which is you build through the offense and defensive line, you build through the draft. And I think that's going to be his primary focus tomorrow. My warning to all, Bears fans out there listening to this is saying, if he comes out of tomorrow with, say, if he trades down and he gets, two offensive linemen or two defensive linemen and one offensive lineman, and maybe gets a corner, like, and doesn't get a receiver, don't, start, burning down the city or saying this guy's got to get fired or anything like that. He's probably sticking to his board, and he's got guys targeted in the later round. So, he's got to build his team from that lineup, right? So he's got to go offensive, defensive line, and then build from there. So I think he's going to come out of this draft with at least two receivers. I'm pretty confident he'll probably get one tomorrow. And then probably get one in day 3, but we'll see what happens. But if he doesn't, if he starts building, putting that capital into the offensive defensive line and cornerback, I wouldn't just jump off ship right away, guys. Let's give him time to get through, because we all know what the plan is, right? It's evident. They're gonna put their system in this year. They're gonna maybe take some lumps this year. They're gonna try and be competitive. But I think they're gearing this up for a long run, and I think that's next offseason with a full draft complement, a draft capital with a huge a salary cap. I think that's where they're going to start making some of their more permanent additions to the roster.
Yeah, and I'm totally with you. And we're not going to be able to judge whether Ryan Poles failed or passed this draft tomorrow. There's absolutely no way that's going to happen. It's going to happen in a couple of years, 3 years, maybe 4 years. We will know if Ryan Poles had a successful first draft as the general manager of the Bears. But it would be intriguing to, it would be nice if he picked some of the names that we've been talking about here and that you and Neil and Danny and Jordan are so happy about, or feel some confidence in. So we'll see. We'll see, and we will be back here tomorrow to discuss all of the action. This is going to be, Danny, so many people today have been saying you guys should be live during the draft, so we might have to consider that tomorrow. Danny.
Well, today I had the thing with my daughter, so that's why I couldn't be. But tomorrow, if you want to guys jump on live, we could be on live during the draft. Obviously, we got to check with Neil and see his schedule. But I mean, I'd be available. I mean, maybe just jump in after the pick and kind of discuss them, and then go back and come back later on after the second, third rounds are done and have a complete show. But if you want just quick reaction after each pick, we can always do that too.
Sounds good. All right. I will leave it there. If you want to see us do something live tomorrow, contact D Shimon 56.
I don't know. Contact at Barroom Network. That's what you got to contact. Aldo Gandia.
Oh man, this has been so much fun listening to you guys talk. And Danny, kudos to you, man. That first hour, it didn't go as planned, of course, because of Neil's Wi-Fi issues, but you did a sensational job of giving us a quick update of all of the players in the first round. So congratulations. That was a great job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Thanks to Jordan. Man, I'm gonna screw up his last name. Thanks to Jordan, Neil, and Danny Shimon. I am Aldo Gandia. We will see you tomorrow. Fuck Detroit.
You're still recording.
No, it shouldn't be.
It says